For thousands of years, a land of endless rivers, towering ziggurats, and ancient cities flourished in the heart of what we now call Mesopotamia. But beneath the dust of time lies a collection of mysteries, enigmas that have defied every attempt to explain them. How did a civilization so ancient create innovations that still puzzle modern science? From the invention of writing to the complex celestial calculations of Babylonian astronomers, these people seem to possess knowledge that was centuries ahead of their time. Yet many of their greatest achievements remain shrouded in ambiguity. Who were the true architects behind the majestic ziggurats, and what did they symbolize? What secrets lie hidden within the ruins of Ur, or in the long-lost libraries of Nineveh? Despite our technological advances, there are still pieces of this ancient puzzle that refuse to fit. The answers elude us, leaving only more questions, more mystery. So, what if we could uncover just one more secret that science can't explain? Sit back, relax, and let's dive into the untold stories of ancient Mesopotamia, where history and the unknown intertwine in ways we can't yet understand. The Temple of Marduk, an ancient structure nestled at the heart of Babylon, once towered with an imposing grandeur that spoke of a civilization at its zenith. In the bustling streets of the great city, beneath the endless sky of Mesopotamia, the temple stood as both a sanctuary and a symbol, a place where the divine met the mortal, where the fate of the empire was believed to be intertwined with the will of the gods. Built in honor of Marduk, the chief god of the Babylonian Pantheon, the temple was a manifestation of Babylon's religious and political might. It was more than a mere place of worship. It was the very heart of the city, the seat of divine power. Its towering structure was said to be visible from nearly every corner of Babylon, dominating the skyline as a testament to Marduk's omnipotence. But beyond its physical presence, the Temple of Marduk was enshrined in an aura of mystery. The very nature of its construction and purpose remains a subject of intense fascination. The temple itself, known as Isagila, is thought to have been a vast complex, encompassing courtyards, shrines, and altars dedicated to various gods. Central to it was the great ziggurat of Etemenanki, a massive stepped pyramid that, according to ancient texts, reached toward the heavens like a beacon, offering access to the divine. This ziggurat, whose name means house of the platform between heaven and earth, was believed to be where Marduk himself resided. It was said to be the focus of Babylonian religious life, and even the most powerful rulers of the time made pilgrimages to this sacred site to seek favor from the god. But despite its grandeur, much of the temple remains a mystery, lost to time and the ravages of history. The ziggurat itself, once a monument to the gods, now lies in ruins, its stones scattered by centuries of conflict and erosion. While scholars have pieced together fragments of ancient texts and inscriptions that speak of the temple's importance, the full extent of its original structure, its rituals, and the significance of its design are lost to us. Perhaps the most enigmatic aspect of the Temple of Marduk is its role in the religious and political life of Babylon. Marduk was not only a god of creation and destruction, but also the divine protector of the Babylonian people. In the Enuma Elish, the Babylonian creation epic, Marduk is portrayed as a cosmic warrior who defeats the forces of chaos and brings order to the universe. This mythic narrative, central to Babylonian identity, was recited during the New Year festival, Akitu, a ritual that took place at the temple. It was said that during this festival, the king of Babylon would enter the temple and symbolically surrender his power to Marduk. Only by submitting to the god could the king ensure the prosperity and stability of the empire. In many ways, the Temple of Marduk was not only a religious space, but also a political tool, reinforcing the king's divine right to rule. However, what remains unclear is the exact nature of the rituals performed within the temple. While we know that sacrifices were made and prayers offered, there are little details available about the specific ceremonies held within the temple's inner sanctum, the space believed to be closest to the divine presence. What happened in those hallowed halls? Were there secret rites, known only to a select few priests, that have yet to be uncovered? Some speculate that the Temple of Marduk, like other ancient religious structures, may have been the site of hidden knowledge, secrets locked away from the common people. Was the knowledge of astronomy, mathematics, and architecture encoded into the very structure of the temple? It is known that the Babylonians were masterful astronomers, and it's likely that their celestial observations were closely tied to the rituals performed at Esagila. Could the positioning of the temple's structure have been aligned with certain astronomical events or constellations? Some have suggested that the temple's design may have held more than symbolic meaning, that it was a gateway to understanding the cosmos in ways we are only beginning to grasp. Another unanswered question surrounds the legendary Ishtar Gate, the entrance to the temple complex. Adorned with images of dragons and bulls, it is considered one of the greatest examples of Babylonian art and architecture. But beyond its aesthetic brilliance, there is something unsettling about its design. Some have wondered if the gate was more than just a ceremonial entrance. Was it an active portal, a place where the boundary between the earthly and divine was thought to be thin? Was it perhaps a location for initiates into ancient Babylonian mysteries we may never fully understand? Despite its legendary status, the temple's fate is another facet of the mystery that is yet to be fully explained. Following the fall of Babylon to the Persian king Cyrus the Great in 539 BCE, the city and its temples were gradually abandoned, and much of the temple's treasure and records were lost. The ziggurat, once a towering presence, fell into ruin. What happened to the sacred objects that once resided within the temple? Where are the vast wealth and knowledge that were once guarded by the high priests of Marduk? And why, after centuries of devotion, did the city of Babylon and its most important temple seem to vanish into obscurity? There are still whispers of something more beneath the ruins. Some believe that the temple's sanctum contains hidden texts or objects, perhaps linked to the lost knowledge of the ancient world. Could there still be an undiscovered chamber within the ruins, holding the key to understanding the full extent of Babylonian religious practices and their connection to the cosmos? And then there's the question of the god Marduk himself. Was he truly a figure of divine power, or was he a symbol for something greater, perhaps a reflection of Babylon's empire-building ambitions? Could Marduk, as some have speculated, have been a personification of an ancient, lost civilization whose knowledge was far beyond that of the Babylonians themselves? Even today, as archaeologists continue to unearth fragments of this once mighty temple, the questions persist. While we may never know the complete truth about the Temple of Marduk, its legacy lingers, an enduring enigma, a reminder of the great mysteries that lie beneath the surface of history. Perhaps the final secrets of the temple are waiting to be uncovered, or perhaps they will remain forever hidden, lost to the sands of time. As we shift our focus from the grandeur of the Temple of Marduk, we now find ourselves in the realm of law and justice, another cornerstone of the ancient world. In the distant city of Ur, a long-forgotten yet profound document was inscribed on clay. It was a legal code, one that predates the famous Code of Hammurabi by centuries, and it remains a vital piece of the puzzle in understanding the complexities of early Mesopotamian society. This artifact, known as the Code of Ur-Nammu, is among the oldest surviving legal texts in history. It was crafted by Ur-Nammu, the king of the third dynasty of Ur, around 2100 BCE. As one of the earliest kings to establish a formal set of laws, Ur-Nammu's code offers us a glimpse into the values and societal norms of the Sumerians, a people who laid the foundations for much of Western civilization. The text itself, inscribed in Sumerian cuneiform, contains a series of laws and punishments, addressing everything from theft to marriage and from the rights of women to the responsibilities of rulers. On the surface, it appears to be a straightforward legal code, clear, concise, and in many ways surprisingly modern. Laws are listed with their corresponding punishments, often specifying fines or corporal punishment for crimes committed. For example, a builder who constructs a house that collapses and causes the death of its occupant is put to death, a stark reminder of the harshness of justice in ancient times. But beneath this structure of justice, there lies something more elusive, something that modern scholars have only begun to appreciate fully. The very existence of a legal code so early in history raises questions that extend beyond the mere framework of justice. How did a society that had only recently emerged from the shadows of prehistory develop such a sophisticated system of laws? Was it simply the practical need of an expanding empire, or was there something more to the creation of such a code, something that speaks to the very nature of power, order, and civilization itself? While we know that the Code of Ur-Nammu was created to bring order to a rapidly growing and politically complex society, the influence of the code may have extended far beyond the boundaries of Ur. Ur-Nammu's laws seem to represent not just a consolidation of power, but a reflection of divine authority. After all, the king's power was often seen as divinely sanctioned, and many of his laws are framed as though they are ordained by the gods. Was Ur-Nammu, in effect, an earthly representative of divine will, bringing cosmic order to the chaotic human world through his legal code? The historical record surrounding the Code of Ur-Nammu remains tantalizingly sparse. We know that it was written in a time of great upheaval, after the fall of the Akkadian Empire and the eventual rise of Ur as a dominant force in Mesopotamia. But the precise reasons for its creation remain speculative. Was Ur-Nammu simply responding to internal instability, seeking to restore order? Or could it be that there was a more metaphysical purpose behind the code, an attempt to channel the divine and bring about a higher moral law for society? The surviving tablets of the Code of Ur-Nammu provide only a fragment of the whole. A large portion of the code has been lost to time, leaving us with more questions than answers. What did the complete text entail? Did it address issues that went beyond what we see in the surviving fragments? Perhaps ideas on ethics, governance, or spirituality that have yet to be uncovered? Some scholars suggest that the missing portions of the code could offer insights into the broader philosophical and religious ideas of Ur-Nammu's time, possibly even revealing a deeper connection between law and cosmology in early Mesopotamian thought. What is particularly intriguing is the structure of the punishments themselves. Unlike later legal codes, which often focused on the principle of lex talionis, the law of retaliation, the Code of Ur-Nammu suggests a more nuanced approach to justice. While there are certainly harsh punishments, there is also an emphasis on fines as a means of compensation. The idea that crime could be rectified through monetary means reflects a system of justice that was not solely about retribution, but about restoring balance. Could this emphasis on compensation be a reflection of a deeper philosophical understanding of human relationships and societal harmony? There are also those who wonder if the Code of Ur-Nammu might be more than just a legal document. Could it be, in some sense, a reflection of ancient Mesopotamian ideas about the cosmic order? The idea that the king's laws were derived from the gods suggests that the laws were not only for the good of society, but for the good of the universe itself. Was the code, in some sense, a ritual act, an attempt to impose human order onto a world that was thought to be governed by divine forces? And if this is the case, might we find within the laws themselves clues to deeper religious or philosophical teachings? The very nature of Ur-Nammu's reign and the code he established raises further questions about the intersection of law, religion, and politics in the ancient world. Did the king's authority derive solely from his position as ruler, or was it tied to his relationship with the divine? Was the Code of Ur-Nammu an expression of a greater truth, hidden beneath the surface of everyday life in ancient Ur? And what can the legal framework he created tell us about the way ancient Mesopotamians viewed morality, justice, and the divine? For now, the mysteries of the Code of Ur-Nammu remain unsolved. We may never know the full extent of its contents or the precise motivations behind its creation. What we do know is that it marks an important moment in history, one in which the notion of law and justice began to take on a shape that we can still recognize today. But even as we uncover more details about the code and its context, the unanswered questions continue to linger, urging us to look deeper into the complexities of this ancient civilization. Was Ur-Nammu merely a ruler, or was he a prophet, bringing divine wisdom into the human world through his legal code? What might the missing portions of the code reveal? And most intriguingly, what other mysteries remain hidden in the texts of ancient Mesopotamia, waiting for us to unlock them? As we journey deeper into the enigmatic world of ancient Mesopotamia, we now turn our attention to a city that holds one of the most profound mysteries of the ancient world, Nippur. Situated along the banks of the Euphrates River, Nippur was one of the most significant religious centers of Sumerian and Akkadian civilizations. But despite its importance, much about this ancient city remains veiled in shadow. Nippur was not just another city. It was the sacred heart of Mesopotamian religion. It was home to the Temple of Enlil, the god of wind and air, who was believed to be the ruler of the universe and the patron deity of kings. To the Sumerians, Nippur was a place where the divine could be reached, a city that bridged the gap between the gods and humankind. And yet, this ancient city, with its towering ziggurats and sanctuaries, holds a mystery that is not fully understood. What exactly was Nippur's role in the broader history of Mesopotamia? And what secrets may still lie buried beneath its ruins? The Enlil Temple, at the center of Nippur, was regarded as one of the most important religious structures in all of Mesopotamia. It was said to have been founded long before the rise of Sumerian cities, possibly even predating the establishment of Uruk and Eridu. But the true origins of the temple remain elusive. Was it merely a religious center, or was it something more, an epicenter of cosmic knowledge, perhaps, or even a focal point for a much older, forgotten civilization? Archaeological excavations have revealed a wealth of artifacts, inscribed tablets, and remnants of monumental architecture, yet many questions remain unanswered. Nippur's ziggurat, the Ekor, was once one of the tallest and most awe-inspiring structures in the ancient world, rivaling even the ziggurat of Ur. Built to honor Enlil, it stood as a testament to the city's spiritual and political power. But as with many ancient sites, the passage of time has taken its toll. Today, the ziggurat is reduced to little more than a pile of ruins, its once gleaming stone steps now weathered by centuries of neglect. It is said that the ziggurat of Nippur held an enormous number of sacred texts and royal inscriptions, but much of this knowledge has been lost. Could these texts have contained vital clues about the religious and astronomical systems of the Sumerians, systems that could have been more advanced than we realize? Some speculate that the temple might have housed hidden scrolls, texts not only about the gods and their rituals, but about other, perhaps even cosmic realms of knowledge. Was Nippur's role purely religious, or was it a center of knowledge, housing secrets that could explain more about ancient Mesopotamian understanding of the cosmos? The mystery of Nippur deepens when we look at its connection to the ancient Anunnaki, the deities who were believed to govern not only human affairs, but the very forces of nature and the heavens themselves. In the ancient Sumerian Pantheon, Enlil was not just a god of the wind. He was seen as the supreme deity who made the decisions of the cosmos. His temple, in Nippur, was said to be the axis upon which the fate of the world turned. But who, or what, were these gods really? And why was Nippur, the home of Enlil, so closely tied to the Anunnaki's influence over earthly and celestial events? It's here, in the realm of the Anunnaki, that speculation begins to blur the line between history and the extraordinary. Some theorists have proposed that Nippur, as the home of Enlil, may have been a location for interactions with beings far beyond what we traditionally consider divine. Was Nippur, perhaps, a place where ancient peoples came into contact with extraterrestrial entities? Could the advanced astronomical knowledge the Sumerians seemed to possess, far ahead of their time, be a remnant of such interactions? While there is no concrete evidence to support these claims, the very notion that Nippur might have been a site for something beyond the ordinary is a tantalizing possibility. Further adding to the intrigue is the question of Nippur's abandonment. The city, once at the height of its power, eventually fell into decline. By the end of the Third Dynasty of Ur, around 2000 BCE, Nippur's political and religious influence had waned. While there are theories that external invasions or shifting trade routes contributed to the city's fall, some argue that its decline was more subtle, an internal decay that left the city spiritually hollow. Did the disappearance of Nippur from the historical record mark the end of an era, or was it the fading of something even more profound? One of the most puzzling aspects of Nippur's history is its role in the kingship of ancient Mesopotamia. While the city itself may not have been the seat of temporal power, like Babylon or Assyria, it played a key role in the validation of kingship. Kings, particularly those from neighboring cities, would make pilgrimages to Nippur to seek the blessings of Enlil. There was a belief that the legitimacy of a ruler could only be confirmed by the god Enlil through rituals conducted in the Temple of Nippur. This suggests that Nippur's spiritual influence stretched far beyond its own borders, intertwining with the fates of many kingdoms across the region. Some ancient texts mention that after a king's coronation, his first act was to travel to Nippur to honor Enlil. Was this simply a ceremonial practice, or did it hold a deeper, perhaps cosmic significance? Was Nippur's role as the spiritual center of Mesopotamia a reflection of its connection to the gods? Or was it tied to a more mysterious force, one that influenced the rise and fall of empires? Archaeological efforts to understand Nippur have yielded remarkable discoveries, but so much remains hidden. The city's many layers, both literally in the archaeological strata and figuratively in the mythology and religious practices, offer clues, but they also present more questions than answers. What we do know is that Nippur's role in Mesopotamian history is undeniable, and its influence may have been far greater than we can fully comprehend. The ruins of Nippur today seem to whisper of something deeper, something untold. Could the secrets hidden within these ancient walls reveal new truths about Mesopotamian religion, culture, or perhaps even knowledge that we have yet to grasp? And perhaps more intriguingly, could Nippur hold answers to questions that go beyond the scope of our understanding, bridging the ancient world with mysteries that still puzzle us today? As we continue to explore the history of Nippur, we are reminded that even in the most studied of ancient cities, mysteries remain, waiting to be uncovered, piece by piece, one fragment at a time. And though we may have learned much, the full story of Nippur and its hidden significance still remains to be told. As we move from the sacred city of Nippur, with its mysteries tied to the divine, we now turn our attention to a different kind of treasure, one of knowledge, power, and the written word. Far to the north, in the great Assyrian capital of Nineveh, lies the Library of Ashurbanipal, a site that holds one of the most extraordinary collections of ancient texts ever discovered. But beneath the dust and fragments of clay tablets, a deeper enigma persists. What knowledge did this library hold, and why does it remain so significant to our understanding of the ancient world? The Library of Ashurbanipal was not merely a collection of books, it was an archive of the world itself. Established by the Assyrian king Ashurbanipal during his reign in the 7th century BCE, the library was an immense endeavor, one that sought to gather and preserve the written wisdom of many different cultures. When it was unearthed in the mid-19th century, the discovery sent shockwaves through the academic world. Here, in the ancient ruins of Nineveh, were thousands of clay tablets inscribed with cuneiform, ranging from royal inscriptions to mythological epics, medical texts, and even mystical incantations. At the heart of the library's collection was the Epic of Gilgamesh, one of the oldest and most important works of literature in human history. These tablets, along with many others, provide a glimpse into the ancient Assyrian worldview, a world shaped by gods, kings, and the pursuit of knowledge. Yet, there is something even more fascinating about this library, something that goes beyond the texts themselves. The very fact that Ashurbanipal, a warrior king, would go to such great lengths to collect and preserve knowledge speaks to a deeper, perhaps even otherworldly, purpose. Ashurbanipal's library was not merely a storehouse for administrative records or propaganda. It was, rather, an attempt to capture the essence of human experience, history, religion, science, and wisdom. It's clear that the king was not only interested in military conquest and expansion, he was also driven by a profound intellectual curiosity. His library was a symbol of power, yes, but it also revealed his desire to understand the universe and mankind's place within it. The tablets found in the ruins of Nineveh cover an astonishing array of topics: medical knowledge, astrology, astronomy, mathematics, law, divination, and, of course, literature. But what is striking is the diversity of sources from which these texts were drawn. Ashurbanipal's collection includes works from Mesopotamia, as well as from Babylonia, Sumer, and even the far-flung regions of the Elamites. The king did not simply collect knowledge for the sake of conquest. He actively sought out the wisdom of others, sometimes from cultures he had conquered, preserving them in his library for future generations. This makes one wonder, why did Ashurbanipal place such value on preserving this knowledge? Was it simply a reflection of the king's intellectual ambition, or was there something more to it? Some have suggested that Ashurbanipal's pursuit of knowledge was an attempt to wield control over the very forces of the cosmos. Could the vast array of texts in his library have contained not just information about the world, but about unseen, perhaps even supernatural forces? Was Ashurbanipal looking for answers to the great existential questions about fate, the gods, the afterlife, and the mysteries of the universe? We also have to consider the mysterious context of the library's destruction. In the 7th century BCE, Nineveh fell to the Babylonians and Medes, marking the end of the Assyrian Empire. The library was largely destroyed in the chaos that followed, and many of its texts were lost. But even so, the surviving tablets offer tantalizing clues to the secrets held within. What, we may wonder, was the full extent of the knowledge that was contained in the library? Were there texts in Ashurbanipal's collection that were deliberately hidden or suppressed? Works that might reveal something far more profound than we can currently comprehend? What is perhaps most intriguing is that the texts themselves often seem to blur the line between historical fact and mythology. The Epic of Gilgamesh, for example, recounts the heroic deeds of a semi-divine king and his quest for immortality. But within its verses, there are echoes of ancient beliefs about gods, kings, and the afterlife, ideas that seem to transcend time and place. Could Ashurbanipal have seen himself as a direct descendant of the gods, seeking to cement his divine right to rule through the preservation of knowledge? One of the more fascinating aspects of the library's collection is its inclusion of astrological and astronomical texts. In ancient Mesopotamian culture, the stars were seen as powerful forces that governed the fate of kings and kingdoms. The Assyrians, like the Babylonians, were experts in observing the heavens, and many of the tablets found in the library contain detailed records of celestial events, eclipses, comets, planetary movements, events that were believed to be omens, signaling divine approval or wrath. Were these texts merely a way of recording celestial phenomena, or were they part of a larger, hidden system of knowledge, one that connected the movements of the stars to the fortunes of kings, the rise and fall of empires, and perhaps even the fate of the world itself? It is here, in the study of the stars and the reading of omens, that we find some of the more speculative theories surrounding the Ashurbanipal Library. Some have proposed that the king's obsession with astrological knowledge was not merely an interest in celestial events, but an attempt to tap into a form of divine power. The belief in the stars as divine markers of fate suggests that Ashurbanipal might have sought to use this knowledge to influence the very course of history. Did he believe that by understanding the movements of the heavens, he could foresee or even control the future? Perhaps even more mysteriously, some have speculated that the library held secrets about the ancient lost sciences of Mesopotamia, knowledge that could have been far more advanced than what we think of today. Was Ashurbanipal's library merely a collection of ancient knowledge, or could it have been the repository of something far more significant? Was there a hidden understanding of the world's deeper mechanics, perhaps encoded in the very structure of the texts themselves? What is clear is that, like so many ancient libraries, the Library of Ashurbanipal represents more than just a collection of books. It is a symbol of the thirst for knowledge that transcends generations, and the desire to understand the forces that shape the world. The library's destruction in the fall of Nineveh marked the loss of a treasure trove of human wisdom, but it also left us with more questions than answers. What knowledge did Ashurbanipal truly uncover in his quest to understand the universe? What was lost with the burning of his library, and what might still lie hidden in the forgotten tablets buried beneath the ruins of Nineveh? As we reflect on the library's legacy, we are left with one lingering question. In the pursuit of knowledge, how much of it was meant to be understood, and how much was perhaps intended to remain a mystery, waiting for a future civilization to unlock its secrets? The Library of Ashurbanipal may have been destroyed, but its legacy lives on, stirring our curiosity about the untold stories still buried in its ancient texts. As we step away from the vast repository of knowledge once held in Ashurbanipal's library, we now shift our gaze to an enigmatic figure whose legacy lingers in the shadows of history, the Sumerian king Lugalzagesi. While the names of kings like Sargon of Akkad and Gilgamesh are celebrated across millennia, Lugalzagesi's name is often relegated to the margins of history. Yet this figure holds a key to understanding the forces that shaped early Mesopotamian civilization. A king whose rise and fall were as dramatic as they were mysterious. Lugalzagesi ruled over the city-state of Umma in the mid-3rd millennium BCE, a time when the Sumerian city-states were locked in a constant struggle for dominance. His name, which means the great man of the people, suggests a ruler who was both powerful and charismatic, a leader who commanded respect and awe. However, his reign, though brief, was marked by an unprecedented series of conquests that challenged the established order of Sumer. Lugalzagesi's most significant achievement was his unification of several Sumerian cities under his rule. Before his time, the Sumerian city-states, such as Ur, Lagash, Nippur, and Eridu, were fiercely independent, each with its own political and religious systems. But Lugalzagesi's ambitions led him to conquer and merge many of these cities into a single empire. In his inscriptions, he boldly claims to have defeated the rulers of Uruk, Ur, and Lagash, cities that had long been considered powerful centers of Sumerian culture. This unification, while remarkable, raises a multitude of questions. What drove this relatively unknown king to embark on such an ambitious conquest? Was it simply the desire for power, or was there something more profound at play? One of the most intriguing aspects of Lugalzagesi's reign is the mysterious Ziggurat of Uruk, a massive step pyramid that may have symbolized his claim to divinity. Built during his rule, the ziggurat was intended to honor the god Shara, the deity of Uruk, but it is believed that Lugalzagesi himself was also deified in the process. His name, inscribed on numerous tablets and monumental structures, was often associated with divine authority, suggesting that he might have considered himself not just a king, but a living god. The notion of a king as divinity was not unique to Lugalzagesi, but his claim to divinity, made at a time when religious power was inextricably tied to political power, raises a fascinating question. Did Lugalzagesi truly believe in his own divine status, or was this a calculated move to solidify his rule? The fall of Lugalzagesi is as enigmatic as his rise. After securing his empire through military conquest and religious legitimization, he was overthrown by Sargon of Akkad, the very man who would go on to establish the first true empire in Mesopotamian history. Lugalzagesi was captured by Sargon's forces, paraded through the streets in chains, and executed. His fall was swift, and after his death, his name and legacy were largely erased from history, almost as if an attempt had been made to completely remove him from the collective memory of Mesopotamia. But why? What was it about Lugalzagesi's reign that made his name so dangerous to those who followed him? Some scholars argue that the erasure of Lugalzagesi's memory was a deliberate act of propaganda by Sargon, who sought to legitimize his own rule by diminishing the accomplishments of his predecessor. The Akkadian Empire, founded by Sargon, was built on the idea of centralized control, and Lugalzagesi's success in uniting the Sumerian city-states presented a challenge to Sargon's own vision of power. By eliminating Lugalzagesi from the historical record, Sargon could ensure that his own rise to power appeared more organic, as though he had been the true liberator of Sumer, rather than the conqueror of an empire that had already existed. Yet, there is also the possibility that Lugalzagesi's memory was suppressed for other reasons, perhaps because his rule threatened the very foundations of Sumerian society. After all, Lugalzagesi was a king who not only unified the city-states through conquest, but who also claimed divine status and used religion as a means of solidifying his rule. In the religiously charged world of Sumer, where kings were expected to rule by the will of the gods, a ruler who positioned himself as both king and god could have destabilized the delicate balance between divine authority and earthly power. Did his fall signal the end of a larger, perhaps unspeakable ambition, one that was too dangerous for those who followed him to allow to persist? Another tantalizing theory is that Lugalzagesi's downfall may have been tied to the mysterious events that unfolded in the region during his reign. Though his military conquests were impressive, they were also marked by unusual religious practices and the destruction of temples. Inscriptions from his reign suggest that he may have dismantled sacred sites or changed religious rites that had long been held sacred by the people of Sumer. Could this have been an attempt to control the gods, or was it a sign of a deeper, more unexplainable agenda? Some speculate that Lugalzagesi may have been attempting to tap into forbidden knowledge, something that went beyond the conventional understanding of Sumerian religion. Was he perhaps uncovering ancient, hidden truths that threatened the status quo, prompting the swift response of those who feared what he might discover. The physical remnants of Lugalzagesi's reign are scarce, but his name survives in a few key artifacts, including inscriptions and royal decrees. His brief but dramatic rise and fall have left an indelible mark on the historical record, though much about him remains a mystery. The most puzzling aspect of his legacy is the striking contrast between his apparent power and the subsequent erasure of his name from the historical narrative. While Sargon's empire would go on to dominate the region, Lugalzagesi's empire, once unified and strong, was reduced to little more than a fleeting footnote in the annals of history. As we reflect on the legacy of Lugalzagesi, we are left to wonder, what might we have lost in the pages of history, erased from memory by the victors? What truths about his reign, his divine claims, and his vision for a unified Sumer remain locked away, hidden beneath layers of time and conquest? The mystery of Lugalzagesi serves as a reminder that, in the ancient world, the stories we know are often those that were allowed to survive, while others, perhaps even more profound, have slipped into obscurity. As we leave behind the complex and enigmatic legacy of Lugalzagesi, we turn to a striking monument of a different kind. A stone obelisk that has captured the imaginations of historians, archaeologists, and mystery seekers alike. In the heart of Nimrud, the ancient Assyrian city of Kalhu, stands the black obelisk of Shalmaneser III, a monolithic artifact that holds a story written not only in stone, but in the very fabric of Assyrian imperial ambition. This dark basalt monument, standing almost 2 meters tall, was erected by Shalmaneser III, the king of Assyria, who reigned from 859 BCE to 824 BCE. The obelisk itself is remarkable, not just for its size and the quality of its craftsmanship, but for what it portrays, a visual record of the king's military campaigns, victories, and the tributes paid to him by foreign rulers. The most famous and debated aspect of the black obelisk, however, lies in its detailed carvings, which depict various scenes, each one telling a story of power, subjugation, and diplomacy in the ancient world. In one of the most prominent scenes, we see the king receiving tribute from a biblical figure, Jehu, the king of Israel. Jehu is shown kneeling before Shalmaneser III, presenting a tribute of precious gifts. This moment, captured in stone, presents a direct and undeniable link between the Assyrian Empire and the biblical world. For scholars of the ancient Near East, this image represents one of the few verifiable connections between the Assyrians and the people of the Bible. Yet, while this connection is solidly grounded in historical fact, the image itself raises as many questions as it answers. Why, we may ask, did Jehu, who had once been a ruler of Israel, a land that Assyria would later conquer, submit to Shalmaneser III, the very king who would eventually crush his kingdom? What kind of political maneuvering or desperation would lead to such a scene? Was this tribute simply an act of fealty, or was it a symbol of something deeper, something more strategic or symbolic in the relationship between Israel and Assyria? The black obelisk is full of such moments where powerful kings and rulers, sometimes enemies, sometimes allies, are depicted paying tribute, offering treasures, and bending their knee to the might of Assyria. But these scenes are not merely artistic representations. They are also diplomatic messages, encoded with a subtle power dynamic that tells us much about the world Shalmaneser III sought to shape. These images convey not just the wealth and might of Assyria, but also the complex network of relationships, both peaceful and hostile, that underpinned the Assyrian Empire. Yet, there is something even more intriguing about the black obelisk, something that goes beyond the tribute of foreign kings. If we study the inscriptions on the monument, we are presented with a long and somewhat troubling list of names, places, and events. The king's campaigns are laid out in detail, but there is one striking feature. The names of certain kings and peoples appear only once, never to be heard from again. Did these rulers meet their end at the hands of Assyria, or did they simply vanish from history in other, more mysterious ways? The obelisk also highlights an unsettling pattern of destruction and cultural erasure. While Shalmaneser's reign was marked by military success, it was also defined by a series of brutal campaigns aimed at crushing resistance and establishing Assyrian dominance across the region. But in the visual narrative told by the Black Obelisk, there is something else, an almost eerie precision in the way these rulers are depicted, as if they were not just conquered, but marked for historical oblivion. Could it be that Shalmaneser III, in his zeal to create a lasting legacy, sought to erase any trace of resistance to Assyrian rule? Perhaps the most mysterious feature of the Black Obelisk lies not in the tribute paid to Shalmaneser, but in the method of commemoration itself. How is it possible for these foreign kings to accept such a portrayal? What were the political and psychological dynamics that allowed one ruler to kneel before another in such a public and publicized manner? Was it simply an act of submission, or was there a deeper layer of meaning, one that hinted at more intricate power plays and alliances between the kingdoms of the ancient world? We know that Shalmaneser III's reign was characterized by a complex mix of war and diplomacy, often shifting between brutal conquest and carefully managed political relationships. The Black Obelisk, in this sense, may have been part of a carefully orchestrated campaign to reinforce Assyria's image as a dominant and civilized empire, both feared and respected by its neighbors. But what is perhaps most compelling is the notion that these monuments and the events they depict were not merely a record of the past. They were an active part of Shalmaneser's propaganda, designed not just to celebrate his victories, but to cement them in the historical record for eternity. This leads us to the question, was the Black Obelisk truly a simple record of power, or was it part of a broader narrative, one in which the Assyrian king's influence was extended not just through military might, but through the careful manipulation of history itself? The fact that this obelisk, one of the most powerful symbols of Assyrian imperial propaganda, was so meticulously crafted and yet preserved through the centuries, speaks to the enduring nature of these ancient political strategies. And perhaps, beyond all of this, there remains the more profound mystery. What does it tell us about the ancient world's obsession with immortality through monuments? Was the Black Obelisk of Shalmaneser III merely a tool of imperial assertion, or was it a symbolic gesture, a way for the king to transcend time, to make his presence felt not just in the present, but in the far future as well? These questions remain unanswered, and the Black Obelisk, standing in the British Museum today, continues to cast its shadow over our understanding of ancient history. As we consider the legacy of the Black Obelisk, we are left to ponder, what of the rulers and nations who did not make it into history? What of the names lost to time, left behind by the Assyrian hand of conquest? The Black Obelisk, in all its monumental grandeur, invites us to wonder how much of history has been shaped by the victors, and how much of it remains hidden in the shadows, waiting to be uncovered. From the towering Black Obelisk of Shalmaneser III, we turn our attention to another monumental relic of ancient Mesopotamian civilization, the Anu Ziggurat of Uruk. Standing at the edge of the ancient city, its remnants still speak to us across millennia. The ziggurat was once a symbol of divine power and celestial ambition, dedicated to the great god Anu, the supreme deity of the Sumerian Pantheon. Today, the ruins of the Anu Ziggurat in Uruk, an ancient city of Sumer and one of the world's first great urban centers, raise more questions than answers. Questions that delve into the very foundations of religious, architectural, and cosmic understanding in ancient Mesopotamia. Uruk, located in modern-day Iraq, was one of the most influential cities of its time, often described as the birthplace of writing, the cradle of civilization. At its peak, it was a bustling metropolis with towering walls and monumental structures. But it is the Anu Ziggurat that has become its most iconic symbol. Rising over 50 meters, the ziggurat would have been an awe-inspiring sight, a massive stepped pyramid of mud brick dedicated to the god who governed the heavens and the stars. But as we look at its ruins today, much of its original splendor is gone, leaving behind only a shadow of its former grandeur. The structure is incomplete, its once proud terraces now reduced to fragments of stone and earth. And yet, the Anu Ziggurat continues to draw scholars and archaeologists with its ancient mystery, a mystery that seems to transcend its physical structure. The ziggurat was not just an architectural marvel, it was also a spiritual center, a place where the divine was believed to descend upon the earth. In Mesopotamian religious belief, the ziggurat served as a bridge between the human and the divine, with each tier of the pyramid-like structure symbolizing a step closer to the heavens. It was at the summit of this towering monument that priests would have performed rituals to honor Anu, the god of the sky. The higher one ascended, the closer they were to Anu himself, whose presence was believed to infuse the very structure of the ziggurat with divine power. But here, as in so many other aspects of Mesopotamian religion, a question lingers. Was the purpose of these towering temples purely religious, or was there something else at play, a deeper, more hidden meaning encoded into the very design of the ziggurat itself? Interestingly, the Anu Ziggurat's position in Uruk also speaks to the city's celestial obsession. Uruk was an early center of astronomical study, and the city's ziggurat was located in such a way that it may have aligned with certain astronomical events, such as the rising of specific stars or the passage of planets. This precise alignment hints at a sophisticated understanding of the cosmos, one that may have gone beyond simple observation and entered the realm of cosmic manipulation. Was the ziggurat merely a place of worship, or did its builders design it to serve as a tool for celestial navigation, or even a way to connect with cosmic forces in a very literal sense? In addition to its astronomical connections, there is something else about the Anu Ziggurat that invites speculation: its scale. Unlike other ziggurats of the time, which often served as temples for a single city, the Anu Ziggurat was far grander. Its design was not only a statement of religious devotion, but of political and cosmic power. The sheer size of the structure suggests that it was built to be seen by more than just the citizens of Uruk. It was meant to project power far beyond the city's walls, declaring the might of Anu and, by extension, the city-state itself. What, then, did the Anu Ziggurat represent to the people of Uruk? Was it merely a place of worship, or did it act as a focal point for the political and social life of the city? Given the interweaving of religion and governance in ancient Mesopotamia, it's likely that the ziggurat served both as a spiritual center and as a symbol of the city's political authority. The rulers of Uruk would have aligned themselves with the divine, claiming that their authority was granted by Anu himself. In this way, the ziggurat could have been both a spiritual conduit and a political tool, a towering monument to the divine right of kings. Yet, as we examine the ruins of the Anu Ziggurat, we are left to wonder whether its true purpose was understood by anyone but the highest echelons of society. The secrets of Uruk's ziggurats, as well as their connection to the broader cosmos, remain largely veiled in mystery. We know from ancient texts that priests and scribes would have been intimately involved in the construction and use of the ziggurat. But how much of the rituals performed atop its steps involved practical observations of the stars, and how much was merely symbolic? Adding another layer of intrigue is the theory that Uruk's ziggurat might have been involved in early forms of astrology or even astronomical prediction. Some scholars have posited that the city's high priests, with their knowledge of the heavens, might have used the ziggurat as a tool to predict celestial events, guiding the political and military decisions of the city's rulers. Did these astronomers believe they could interpret the will of the gods through the movement of the stars and planets, using the ziggurat as a physical manifestation of their belief that the divine controlled the fate of all? But there is more, far more, that remains unexplained. While the ziggurat was dedicated to Anu, one of the most powerful gods in the Mesopotamian Pantheon, some scholars have noted an intriguing absence of direct references to the deity in the surviving texts associated with the ziggurat. This is an unusual detail. Why, if the ziggurat was dedicated to Anu, is there such a lack of explicit reference to him in the inscriptions and carvings associated with the site? Was this omission deliberate? Did it signal that Anu's presence was too sacred to be named, even in public declarations? Or perhaps, does it indicate that the ziggurat served multiple divine purposes, acting as a focal point for the worship of various gods, with Anu being but one of many? Furthermore, archaeological evidence suggests that the ziggurat was not built all at once. It was likely constructed in stages, with each phase adding to the monumental structure over generations. This raises the question, was the ziggurat constantly evolving in response to changing religious, political, or cosmic understandings? Were the builders of Uruk incorporating new ideas into the structure with each addition? The shifting nature of the ziggurat's construction could imply that the builders were actively adapting the design to reflect changing religious or cosmic beliefs, further complicating our understanding of the site's ultimate purpose. The mystery of the Anu Ziggurat persists to this day, and with it comes the tantalizing possibility that much of its significance remains unrealized. What if the ziggurat was not only a structure of worship, but a tool for understanding the universe itself? What if it was a key to deciphering the ancient Mesopotamian obsession with the heavens? As the ruins of Uruk continue to stand, we are left to ponder. What ancient knowledge, lost to time, might still lie buried beneath the ruins, waiting for us to rediscover? As we leave behind the towering heights of the Anu Ziggurat, the towering icon of divine ambition, we turn to a more grounded but equally monumental legacy, the Code of Hammurabi. A relic of law, power, and civilization itself, the stele bearing this ancient code stands as one of the earliest and most significant legal documents in human history. It is both a symbol of the Babylonian king's authority and a testament to the intricate relationship between law, justice, and divine sanction. The Code of Hammurabi, inscribed on a 7.5-foot-tall basalt pillar, was created in 1754 BCE under the rule of Hammurabi, the sixth king of the first Babylonian dynasty. Found at the ancient site of Susa, modern-day Iran, in the early 20th century, the stele is a striking artifact. Its surface is covered with over 280 laws, written in Akkadian cuneiform script, accompanied by a visual scene at the top where Hammurabi himself is depicted, receiving the law directly from the sun god Shamash, who was considered the god of justice and divine authority. This scene links the laws to the divine realm, reinforcing the idea that these rules were not simply the king's will, but the will of the gods themselves. On the surface, the Code of Hammurabi appears straightforward, a set of laws meant to regulate the lives of the people within Hammurabi's vast kingdom. It includes provisions for everything from marriage and divorce to commerce, property, and criminal justice. These laws were intended to promote order, fairness, and justice in a society that was, like all ancient empires, constantly balancing on the edge of chaos. But as we examine the stele more closely, the layers of meaning begin to unfold. And with it comes an array of questions that continue to intrigue historians, archaeologists, and legal scholars alike. The code's most famous and most controversial aspect is the concept of lex talionis, or the law of retaliation, commonly known as an eye for an eye. The laws codify retributive justice, where the punishment is proportional to the crime. If someone caused injury to another, the punishment would reflect the nature of that injury. For example, if a man caused the loss of a limb, his own limb could be taken in return. On the surface, this principle may seem harsh or primitive to modern sensibilities, but in the context of the time, it was revolutionary. The code sought to bring order to vengeance, replacing cycles of endless blood feuds with a structured legal framework designed to promote fairness. However, a question lingers. Was the eye for an eye principle truly an expression of Hammurabi's ideal justice, or was it a tool for control? A way to consolidate power and reinforce the king's authority by making clear the costs of defiance? In a society where retribution was often personal and untethered from state authority, could this rigid system of retributive justice have been a means to avoid anarchy and establish the king as the ultimate arbiter of life and death? Further complicating matters is the curious mix of strictness and flexibility embedded in the code. While it is often remembered for its punitive aspects, the laws also offer leniency in certain cases. For example, they provide the option for a person to appeal to the king's court for a lighter sentence, or for a judge to show mercy under specific circumstances. This juxtaposition, harsh on one hand, merciful on the other, raises intriguing questions about the balance between justice and power in ancient Babylon. Was Hammurabi's code a truly just system, or was it simply a tool for Hammurabi to maintain power over his subjects by providing them a semblance of fairness? As we look deeper into the laws, a more fascinating and mysterious aspect of the Code of Hammurabi emerges: the role of the gods. The stele itself is adorned with inscriptions that emphasize Hammurabi's divinely appointed role in delivering justice. In the top panel, the god Shamash extends to Hammurabi a rod and a ring, symbols of authority. This imagery suggests that Hammurabi's laws were not simply human constructs, but rather the divine will made manifest. The king is not just a ruler, but an intermediary, tasked with upholding divine law on earth. This divine authority raises the unsettling question: to what extent did religion and the gods shape the laws, and how much were they used by Hammurabi as a form of divine propaganda? Was the idea of Hammurabi's divine right to rule merely a political maneuver, designed to legitimize his authority in the eyes of his people and surrounding nations? Or did Hammurabi truly believe that he was acting as a vessel for divine justice, bringing the will of the gods to earth? Perhaps even more fascinating are the mysterious gaps in the code itself. Some scholars have noted that while the Code of Hammurabi covers a vast array of topics, there are curious absences, certain aspects of society and governance that go unexplained or unaddressed. For example, despite its comprehensive coverage of family law, commerce, and crime, the code makes no mention of the slavery system that was prevalent in ancient Babylon. While it addresses the rights of hired laborers, it seems conspicuously silent on the status and treatment of enslaved individuals. Was this an intentional omission, perhaps to avoid angering powerful groups or to maintain the legitimacy of the regime? And what of the code's reach? While Hammurabi's stele was placed in public view, it is important to consider how the laws were actually implemented. How many people in Babylon and its surrounding regions were even aware of the specifics of the code? Were the laws truly followed by all, or were they reserved for the elite, with the common people left to rely on more informal justice? The code's existence suggests that Babylonian society had a complex understanding of law and order, but did it live up to its ideals? Some historians have even speculated that the Code of Hammurabi was more than just a legal text. It might have been a propaganda tool designed to project the image of a fair and just ruler, giving the impression that Hammurabi was a king who ruled by the law rather than by force alone. Was Hammurabi truly as just as he appeared, or was he simply playing a role, with the code acting as a public relations piece to solidify his grip on power? The stele itself offers no definitive answers to these questions, leaving us with more mysteries than conclusions. Its existence raises critical reflections about the role of law in ancient societies, about how power and justice were intertwined, and about the true motivations behind Hammurabi's rule. Was the code a genuine effort to establish fairness, or was it a calculated tool of statecraft aimed at consolidating and maintaining power? What remains clear is that the Code of Hammurabi stands as a monument not just to the king who created it, but to a world where law and order were sacred, where the line between the divine and the human was often blurred, and where justice was both a public spectacle and a personal political tool. The questions surrounding its true purpose continue to resonate, inviting us to wonder what hidden truths might still lie beneath the surface of this ancient code, waiting to be uncovered. As we move from the echoes of Hammurabi's legal codex to the sacred heart of the ancient world, we arrive at a place of power and mystique, the great Temple of Inanna, located in the city of Uruk, a towering monument to the goddess of love, beauty, fertility, and war, Inanna, known in later mythologies as Ishtar. The temple was the spiritual and political center of one of the oldest and most influential cities in Mesopotamian history. The temple, known as the Inanna complex, was not just a place of worship. It was the very embodiment of divine authority, a nexus where the earthly and the divine intertwined in an eternal dance. When visitors first set foot upon the grounds of Uruk, they would have been drawn toward the towering ziggurat at the heart of the Inanna complex. The structure, once a majestic step pyramid of mud brick, would have loomed above the city, casting its shadow over the inhabitants below. From the base, narrow stairways would lead the faithful up to a sacred space reserved for priests and the most esteemed citizens. These were the stairs that connected human civilization to the heavens above, where Inanna herself was said to reside, guiding both the fates of kings and the tides of war. The Temple of Inanna, particularly during its most vibrant periods in the 3rd millennium BCE, would have been a center of extraordinary rituals. The sacred rituals conducted within its walls were believed to invoke the blessings of the goddess, helping to secure fertility for crops, ensuring the success of military campaigns, and even providing divine guidance in matters of governance. But what exactly transpired within the inner sanctum of the temple remains shrouded in mystery. While many aspects of the temple's role in society have been recorded in cuneiform tablets, there is a lingering sense of unanswered questions about the true nature of its influence. Ancient texts describe the great priestesses of Inanna, revered women who held immense power within the city, often wielding authority equal to that of the king himself. Inanna, as the goddess of both love and war, was a deity whose dual nature offered an intriguing paradox. How could the goddess of peace and fertility also be the protector of battlefields and the harbinger of destruction? The answer to this paradox may be found within the ancient myths associated with the goddess, most notably the descent of Inanna. This myth describes how Inanna, seeking greater power, descends into the underworld, only to face a series of challenges that strip her of her divine attributes. Inanna's journey through the 7 gates of the underworld has been interpreted as a metaphor for spiritual transformation, but the exact meaning behind the ritualistic descent remains enigmatic. Some suggest that these myths were not only symbolic, but were woven into the fabric of the temple's ritualistic practices, where the goddess was said to walk among the people in a mystical, living form. Could the sacred rituals of the temple have involved the reenactment of these myths, perhaps through symbolic or even ecstatic performances? Was Inanna's journey into the underworld mirrored in the lives of the temple's priestesses, who would have undergone their own spiritual rites of transformation? And if so, did these rituals hint at something deeper? A hidden knowledge passed down through generations, a secret understanding of life and death, of love and war, held only by those closest to the goddess? Beyond these questions lies the ever-present question of the temple's physical form. The ziggurat, though impressive, was only a small part of a much grander architectural vision. The Inanna complex was a sprawling series of courtyards, temples, and shrines dedicated to various deities associated with Inanna. Excavations have uncovered statues, tablets, and artifacts from the complex, some depicting Inanna herself, others illustrating the worshippers and the activities that occurred within the sacred space. One particularly striking image is a relief depicting a priestess, her hands raised in prayer, surrounded by symbols of fertility, suggesting that the rituals performed in the temple were deeply connected to life-giving forces. Yet some scholars have argued that the temple's significance might have extended beyond mere worship. There is a theory that the Inanna complex served as a political hub, a place where religious and temporal powers converged. Could the temple have been the birthplace of political ideologies, or perhaps the stage on which kings and queens were crowned by the goddess herself? The role of Inanna as a goddess of both love and war presents a fascinating dichotomy. She was revered not just as a fertility deity, but also as a protector of rulers. Could it be that the temple served as a symbol of political legitimacy, reinforcing the divine right of kings? Did the kings of Uruk claim their authority through a divine mandate provided by Inanna? And if so, how much of their power was really influenced by the temple itself? As we delve into the ruins of the Great Temple, one must also confront a disquieting thought. How much of the original temple still remains hidden beneath the sands of time? We know that Uruk was eventually abandoned, and though the city flourished for centuries, by the time of its decline, much of the city and the temple had been looted and destroyed. While we have uncovered portions of the complex, certain parts remain unexplored. What secrets lie buried beneath the rubble? Could there be hidden chambers or artifacts that could reveal more about the true nature of the temple's power and its connection to the ancient world? Furthermore, some scholars point to the architectural evolution of the ziggurat, suggesting that it may have been constructed or altered by multiple rulers over a span of centuries. How much of the temple we see today is a product of later reinventions? Could the ziggurat's original purpose have been something vastly different? And over time, it evolved into the towering symbol of Inanna's power we recognize today. Intriguingly, the mystery of the temple's construction is compounded by the role of divine architecture in Mesopotamian society. Ziggurats were designed to reach the heavens, their towering structures meant to bridge the gap between the mortal and the divine. Was the great temple of Inanna more than just a temple? Could it have been a ritualistic pathway, guiding the soul of the king or the priestess toward a deeper connection with the goddess? What remains undiscovered within the temple's sacred walls? The questions surrounding the great temple of Inanna continue to linger, each unanswered query leading to a greater sense of wonder about the ancient world. The temple stands as both a symbol and a mystery, inviting us to question what is known and what may still lie beneath the sands, waiting for the next generation of archaeologists to uncover its secrets. In the shadows of Inanna's temple, the line between myth and reality becomes blurred. As we peer into its ancient corridors, we are left to wonder, what truths about power, divinity, and transformation might still be hidden within its sacred walls? And in the end, is it possible that some mysteries, no matter how carefully we search, are destined to remain forever veiled in the mystical darkness of history? As we move further into the heart of ancient Mesopotamian mysteries, we find ourselves faced with the intricate and mysterious world of the Sumerian Pantheon. This pantheon, a vast and complex hierarchy of gods and goddesses, forms the very foundation of Sumerian religion, shaping everything from the daily lives of the people to the political systems that governed them. But beneath the well-documented pantheon lies a shadowy realm of unanswered questions, enigmas about the true nature of these deities and the profound influence they had on the ancient world. In the cities of ancient Sumer, towering temples dedicated to the gods were scattered across the landscape. These were not just places of worship, but powerful, living structures where the divine was believed to interact with the earthly realm. The gods, many of whom were said to have physical forms and human-like personalities, were understood to influence every aspect of existence. Their names were spoken in reverence, and their actions were recorded in mythic stories, some of which were passed down in cuneiform texts on clay tablets, texts that have survived thousands of years, though much of their content remains elusive. At the pinnacle of this pantheon stood Anu, the god of the sky who reigned over all things. He was considered the father of the gods, the supreme deity whose will governed not only the heavens, but also the very structure of the cosmos. Below him, however, lay a complex web of lesser gods, each with their own domains, personalities, and spheres of influence. The gods of the Sumerian Pantheon were far from abstract, distant figures. They were often depicted as powerful, human-like beings whose actions shaped the world. Enlil, the god of air, wind, and storms, held dominion over the earth's fate, often portrayed as an angry and wrathful deity whose voice could shake mountains. In contrast, Enki, the god of wisdom and water, was often depicted as a more benevolent figure, aiding humanity with gifts of knowledge, art, and civilization. These gods, while immensely powerful, were also very much human in their desires, emotions, and vices. They would love, fight, and betray one another, reminding the Sumerians that the divine was not always perfect or predictable. One of the most enigmatic aspects of the Sumerian pantheon is the relationship between gods and kingship. It was the kings who claimed direct descent from these deities, asserting that their authority was not just secular but divinely ordained. The god-king relationship was central to Sumerian political ideology. A ruler who was favored by the gods could lay claim to absolute authority, but if he fell out of favor, the consequences could be dire, not only for the king but for the entire kingdom. The myth of Gilgamesh, for example, tells of the king's quest for immortality, reflecting his belief that his power was tied to the will of the gods. But the mystery deepens when we consider the sheer number of gods that populated the Sumerian religious landscape. While we often speak of the major gods like Anu, Enlil, Enki, and Inanna, there were countless other deities, many of whom had more specific, sometimes obscure domains. Ninlil, goddess of the air and wife of Enlil, and Utu, the sun god, were key figures in Sumerian religion, but their roles and relationships with other gods are often difficult to piece together. What did it mean for a society to venerate so many deities, each with a set of contradictory or overlapping powers? There are also mystical elements within the Sumerian pantheon that scholars have yet to fully understand. Take, for example, the goddess Ereshkigal, ruler of the underworld. She presided over the dark realms beneath the earth, a stark contrast to her more widely worshipped sister, Inanna, who ruled the heavens and the earth. But the relationship between these two sisters, both goddesses of immense power, remains puzzling. Inanna's famous descent to the underworld, where she encounters Ereshkigal, raises a series of questions. Was this descent merely symbolic of the cycle of life and death, or could it reflect an ancient ritual involving a passage through physical realms? And what of the enigmatic role of the underworld in Sumerian cosmology? Why was it so prominent, and what did it reveal about the Sumerians' beliefs about death and the afterlife? Further complicating our understanding of the pantheon is the mythological geography of these gods. The Sumerians mapped the world in their religious imagination. But were these divine realms and their associated gods reflective of real places, or were they merely symbolic of cosmic truths? The land of Dilmun, for instance, was considered a paradise, a place where the gods could live free from the toils of the mortal world. But is Dilmun more than a utopian ideal, a place that might have existed physically, or is it purely a metaphysical concept? Some theorists suggest that the Sumerians might have been referring to a real location, potentially a lost city or a site of great importance in ancient times. The idea that the divine and the terrestrial were interwoven in such a way challenges our modern perceptions of myth and geography. Equally mysterious are the rituals that revolved around the Sumerian gods. The Akitu festival, an annual event dedicated to the god Marduk, though a later Babylonian deity, is one example of how the gods were thought to interact with the people. During these rituals, the king would have to humble himself before the gods, even allowing himself to be physically stripped of power in some ceremonies. This complex ritual underscores the deep and sometimes unsettling relationship between humans and gods. But just how much of the divine world was tied to ritual? Were these ceremonies more than just symbolic reenactments, perhaps channeling some kind of divine power? And what role did the priests and priestesses play in these acts of divine contact? The Sumerian Pantheon, with its vast array of deities, its shifting mythologies, and its complex relationships with the natural world, remains a mysterious and challenging puzzle. With every new discovery, we gain more insight into how the Sumerians understood their place in the cosmos, but much still lies beyond our reach. What was the true nature of the gods? Were they purely metaphysical concepts, or did they represent something more tangible and powerful? Perhaps even physical beings interacting with humanity in ways we are still trying to comprehend. And if the gods were indeed manifestations of larger forces in the world, then what can we learn from their relationships, their struggles, and their mysteries? The Sumerian Pantheon offers us a glimpse into a civilization that saw the world not as separate from the divine, but deeply intertwined with it. And as we continue to unravel its secrets, we are reminded that sometimes the most profound mysteries are not meant to be solved, but to be pondered, inviting us to ask, time and again, what do we truly know of the gods, and what of their influence still lingers in the shadows of ancient history? As we turn our attention to the ancient powerhouses of Mesopotamia, one name stands out: Tiglath-Pileser III. His reign, though centuries in the past, continues to captivate scholars and enthusiasts alike, holding within it a mystery that still eludes complete understanding. Tiglath-Pileser III, one of the most influential kings of the ancient Assyrian Empire, ascended the throne in the 8th century BCE, and from the moment he did, he reshaped the trajectory of history. But what is it about his reign that sparks such intrigue? What made him not only a conqueror, but a visionary architect of empire? The Assyrian capital of Nimrud, once a grand and imposing city, stands as a testament to the might of Tiglath-Pileser III. The city's ruins are scattered across the land, revealing the remnants of a civilization that ruled the ancient Near East with unparalleled ferocity. Nimrud was not just a capital, but the symbolic heart of a military juggernaut, a place where strategies were devised, conquests were planned, and power was consolidated. Here, Tiglath-Pileser III would have walked, issuing decrees and directing his armies, all while overseeing the expansion of one of the most brutal empires the world has ever known. Tiglath-Pileser III's name is often associated with the idea of military innovation. He reformed the Assyrian army, transforming it into a formidable force. He created a standing army, which was a revolutionary move at the time, shifting away from the traditional reliance on mercenaries and seasonal levies. The effectiveness of his military tactics is still studied today, as he pioneered the use of chariots, infantry, and siege engines with devastating precision. His Prism of Tiglath-Pileser, a detailed inscription discovered in Nimrud, recounts the brutal campaigns he led across the Middle East, from Israel to Syria, from Babylon to Persia, consolidating power and leaving in his wake a landscape forever altered by Assyrian imperialism. But beyond the records of conquest and expansion, there is a mysterious aspect to Tiglath-Pileser III that we cannot ignore. What drove him to such heights of power and military success? The records that remain provide us with glimpses of his character, his ambitions, and his motivations. But many questions still linger. Why was he so ruthless? And why was he so determined to leave a legacy that would endure millennia after his death? One of the most puzzling elements of Tiglath-Pileser III's reign is his approach to political and cultural integration. While many ancient rulers preferred to dominate through sheer force, Tiglath-Pileser III demonstrated a more calculated approach. His strategy included the deportation of entire populations, referred to as the Assyrian deportation policy, to break the spirit of conquered peoples. This was not just about displacing populations, it was about cultural erasure, forcing defeated communities to integrate into the vast Assyrian Empire. But how did these populations perceive this forced migration? Did they adopt Assyrian ways of life, or did they resist and retain their identities in secret? This forced integration raises questions about the nature of empire building and the cost of maintaining such an extensive empire. While the policy of deportation is well documented, less is known about the deeper motivations behind it. Was it purely pragmatic, an effort to prevent rebellion? Or was there a deeper psychological aspect to Tiglath-Pileser's need to control the very identities of his subjects? Could it be that Tiglath-Pileser III saw himself not merely as a king, but as the bringer of civilization, enforcing a unified culture across the region? Or perhaps, in his drive for power, he sought to obliterate any sense of loyalty to the lands his enemies came from, severing their connections to home and family, making resistance all but impossible. As the Assyrian king expanded his empire, he engaged in political maneuvering that involved a complex web of alliances and betrayals. One particularly intriguing aspect of Tiglath-Pileser III's reign was his relationship with the Israelite kingdom. He allied with King Ahaz of Judah, a decision that would shape the future of the region. Tiglath-Pileser III's intervention in the affairs of the Israelites, even helping them defeat their enemies, raises interesting questions. Was it part of a larger geopolitical strategy, or was it an attempt to secure his own political legacy by influencing the future of the Holy Land? What did this alliance reveal about his broader vision for the Middle East, and how did it affect the internal politics of the Assyrian court? Even more perplexing are the religious undertones of Tiglath-Pileser III's reign. The Assyrians were deeply religious, with their gods entwined in the daily workings of their empire. Ashur, the chief god, was central to Tiglath-Pileser's rule, and the king's authority was believed to be divinely sanctioned. His inscriptions boast of his divine favor and the support of the gods in his military endeavors. But was his faith truly a source of strength, or was it more a tool for propaganda? Could Tiglath-Pileser have believed in his own divinity, or was he simply using the gods to manipulate the people and solidify his control? The mystery deepens when we look at the temple constructions and monumental projects initiated by Tiglath-Pileser III. Like many ancient rulers, he sought to leave behind a legacy of impressive buildings and architectural feats. The ruins of Ur-Nammu, the city he founded and named after himself, serve as a reminder of his ambitious nature. This city, though now largely in ruins, was a carefully planned urban center designed to showcase Assyrian power and splendor. But there's an eerie sense of abandonment that surrounds Ur-Nammu. The city was never completed as planned, and after Tiglath-Pileser's death, it was abandoned, seemingly forgotten by the very empire he built. Was this due to his successors' inability to maintain the vision of their king, or is there something more to the story? Was there an ominous reason why such a grand city, meant to represent Assyrian might, fell into ruin so quickly after its founder's death. There is also the mystery of his death. Tiglath-Pileser III died in 727 BCE under somewhat unclear circumstances. Was it natural, or could it have been assassination? His sudden departure from the throne led to a turbulent succession, with his son, Shalmaneser V, eventually taking the reins. But Tiglath-Pileser's legacy wasn't just about his immediate political achievements. It was the way his empire shaped the region for generations to come. Even after his death, the policies he enacted continued to echo throughout the ancient world. So, what can we make of Tiglath-Pileser III? Was he simply an ambitious conqueror, or was he a man driven by a deeper, more enigmatic vision for his empire? His reign raises more questions than answers. What were his true intentions? What did his military innovations and political machinations reveal about his view of the world? And why did his legacy ultimately become so difficult to maintain? The mysteries surrounding Tiglath-Pileser III invite us to rethink the nature of empire building, power, and leadership. In the end, we may never fully understand what motivated him or what his true legacy is. But perhaps that is the essence of his greatness. A ruler whose name echoes down through history, but whose true soul remains, like the ruins of his cities, buried in the sands of time. As we continue our journey through the enigmatic world of ancient Mesopotamia, we arrive at one of the most haunting and mysterious sites in the entire region, the royal cemetery of Ur. Nestled in the vast desert landscape of southern Iraq, this burial site, uncovered in the 1920s by British archaeologist Sir Leonard Woolley, has unveiled some of the most extraordinary relics of Sumerian civilization. Yet, despite the many treasures unearthed, the true significance of this site, and the stories it tells, remain shrouded in mystery. The royal cemetery of Ur, dating back to the early 3rd dynasty of Ur, is not just a collection of graves, but a sprawling necropolis filled with elaborate tombs of Sumerian royalty and high-ranking officials. It sits on the ancient mound of Tel el-Mukayyar, where the ancient city of Ur once flourished. As the sun sets over the arid landscape, the cemetery evokes a sense of eerie quiet, with the only sounds being the whisper of the wind through the ruins. The towering mounds of earth conceal some of the most extraordinary discoveries in the history of archaeology. Intricate artifacts, astonishingly well-preserved burial goods, and the remains of rituals and customs that defy full comprehension. Woolley's excavations at Ur in the early 20th century revealed more than 2,000 years of burial practices. The tombs are arranged in a hierarchy. At the top, the graves of the royalty and their families, followed by the burials of noblemen and servants. But it is the royal tombs that have attracted the most attention, not only because of the wealth they contain, but because of the startling glimpses they offer into the beliefs and rituals of the ancient Sumerians. Perhaps the most famous of these tombs is that of Queen Pu-Abi, whose grave remains one of the most significant archaeological finds in Mesopotamia. Discovered in 1928, the tomb of Pu-Abi was an incredible treasure trove. Inside, Woolley found gold jewelry, carved stones, and the stunningly preserved remains of a woman adorned with a crown of gold and intricate jewelry. Surrounding her were the skeletons of servants, most likely human sacrifices, arranged in a ceremonial manner. There was an overwhelming sense of opulence in the grave, a testament to her status, yet also an eerie quality. These attendants were buried alive, according to some interpretations of the evidence, serving as an offering to ensure her safe passage to the afterlife. But what does this say about the Sumerian conception of death and the afterlife? Was it truly the belief that these servants would accompany their queen into the next world, or was it a symbolic gesture, a ritual meant to reflect the queen's grandeur even in death? And why were such extreme measures taken to ensure the deceased's journey to the underworld? While this custom is well documented in the records of ancient Mesopotamian funerary practices, the exact reasoning behind these elaborate rituals remains an open question. Another deeply mysterious aspect of the royal cemetery of Ur is the golden harp of Ur, found in the tomb of a Sumerian king. This artifact, made of precious metals and inlaid with lapis lazuli, is one of the finest examples of Sumerian craftsmanship. But beyond its exquisite beauty lies a deeper mystery. Why was it buried with the king? Was the harp simply a symbol of royal status, or did it have a more ritualistic significance, possibly tied to the royal funeral rites or religious beliefs? Music, after all, was a central part of Sumerian life, and it's entirely possible that the harp was intended to accompany the deceased in their journey to the afterlife. Yet the absence of written records that explain the exact function of the harp leaves us only with speculation. The royal cemetery also yielded an astounding find, an artifact known as the Standard of Ur. This artifact, believed to be a ceremonial flag or a military standard, is a rectangular box adorned with intricate mosaics that depict scenes of both warfare and celebration. On one side, soldiers lead prisoners of war to be executed, while the other side shows a king in a lavish celebration. This duality raises intriguing questions. Was the Standard of Ur a reflection of the violent nature of Sumerian politics? Or did it serve as a reminder of the divine mandate the king held to both conquer and reward? And what of the artistic symbolism within the piece? The combination of warfare and celebration on the same object seems to suggest a deeper, perhaps philosophical meaning, one that ties together both the destructive and the celebratory aspects of a king's role. Another extraordinary feature of the royal cemetery is the massive burial pits that Woolley discovered, some containing as many as 70 burials. These pits, filled with a disturbing array of skeletons, are often interpreted as the remains of individuals who were sacrificed to accompany the elite to the afterlife. These people, most likely prisoners of war or individuals from the lower classes, were arranged in a ritualistic manner, with their bodies often positioned in circular formations, or as if they were lying in wait to fulfill their roles in the afterlife. But who decided their fate? Were these individuals willingly sacrificing themselves for the glory of their rulers? Or were they forcibly consigned to death, their lives extinguished in service to a tradition we can barely comprehend today? The sheer scale of the sacrifice suggests that it was not a mere act of honoring the deceased, but a ritual of immense cultural significance. Yet we are left with more questions than answers. Who were these people, and what was their role in the society that buried them so solemnly? Despite the many discoveries, there are still so many aspects of the royal cemetery of Ur that remain unexplained. The most pressing of these questions revolves around the motivations behind the extravagant funerary rites. Why were the royal tombs filled with such lavish goods? Why was so much emphasis placed on ensuring the deceased had everything they could possibly need in the afterlife? Were these items truly meant for use in the afterlife? Or were they more symbolic, meant to demonstrate the power and wealth of the deceased while simultaneously reinforcing the divine nature of their rule? There is also the question of why these tombs were looted so quickly after their burial. While much of the wealth in the tombs was preserved, some of the most valuable artifacts had been taken by thieves, raising the possibility that the tombs were never entirely secure in their burial places. The speed of the looting suggests that these royal burials may have held a powerful allure, even centuries after the fact. Could there have been something else? Something mystical or supernatural that drew looters to these graves, an energy tied to the wealth, status, or the very power of the royal figures entombed within? The royal cemetery of Ur remains one of the most fascinating and enigmatic archaeological sites in the world. It offers us an extraordinary glimpse into a long-lost world, Yet it also confronts us with mysteries that refuse to be neatly explained. The lavish tombs and accompanying treasures suggest a belief system that transcends mere earthly riches, while the mass graves and human sacrifices point to a culture deeply entwined with the unknowns of the afterlife. In the silence of Ur, as we stand amidst the ruins, we are left to wonder, what do these rituals say about the Sumerians' view of death? And perhaps more intriguing, what remains hidden in the sands beneath our feet, waiting to be uncovered, offering more revelations about the secrets of the afterlife, the royal figures who were buried, and the people who lived and died in this extraordinary civilization? As we transition from the remarkable mysteries of Ur, we shift our focus to another towering figure in ancient Mesopotamian history, the Assyrian king Sargon II, whose reign is enveloped in both grandeur and shadow. Known for his military conquests and the establishment of a new dynasty, Sargon II's legacy is often presented as the archetype of Assyrian power. Yet beneath the meticulously documented accounts of his victories, there lingers a profound mystery, one that is tied to his unexpected rise to power, the symbolic importance of his capital, and ultimately, his disappearance. In the land of towering walls, warlike monuments, and intricately carved reliefs, Sargon's story seems far from finished, suggesting that the full extent of his achievements may still be obscured by the sands of time. Sargon II's reign lasted from 722 to 705 BCE, a period marked by brutal military campaigns and territorial expansion. His rule, however, was not secured by mere inheritance or traditional dynastic succession. Instead, Sargon II came to power following a bloodbath that saw the assassination of his predecessor, Shalmaneser V, during the siege of Samaria, the capital of the Kingdom of Israel. The circumstances surrounding Shalmaneser's death remain speculative, whether he was killed in battle or during a courtly coup. But it was Sargon, a relatively obscure military commander at the time, who seized the throne, rapidly consolidating power and solidifying his dynasty. What is truly remarkable, however, is the mysterious narrative surrounding his rise to kingship. Ancient inscriptions from the time make no secret of Sargon's humble origins. His rise was swift, calculated, and marked by aggressive warfare. But what drove him to such heights? How did a man with no royal lineage secure his place on the Assyrian throne? His self-presentation as an established ruler, despite not being born into the role, is notable. In inscriptions, he frequently refers to himself as the son of nobody, an expression that might suggest not only his lack of noble ancestry, but also an intentional myth-making of his own origins, perhaps to legitimize his reign in the eyes of the gods and the people. This self-made king, a warrior without a noble lineage, has led some historians to speculate that his ascendancy was orchestrated by a greater force, a divine mandate, or an unseen power behind the throne. Did Sargon's rise involve the manipulation of religious authorities, or was it purely a product of his military prowess? The exact reasons for his unexpected coronation remain an enigma, leaving us to wonder if the true story of how he became king will ever be fully uncovered. Yet, Sargon II's most enduring legacy is tied not just to his rise but to his ambitious construction of the city of Dur-Sharrukin, a monumental urban center meant to serve as the capital of his empire. Located in the heart of ancient Assyria, the city's name, which translates to Fortress of Sargon, reflects his intense desire to create a personal stronghold that was both a symbol of his power and a tangible representation of his reign. The city, although short-lived, was designed with impressive fortifications, monumental gateways, and the Palace of Sargon, where grand inscriptions recount his conquests and divine favor. However, despite the grand ambitions behind its construction, Dur-Sharrukin is ultimately abandoned after only a few decades. The city was left in ruins, and the reasons for its sudden fall remain unexplained. Why was this imposing city, built with such monumental efforts, abandoned so soon? Was it due to the failure of Sargon's successors to maintain it, or was it an unforeseen military or political downfall? Some historians have speculated that the abandonment could be linked to internal conflicts within the Assyrian court, or an external threat that left the city vulnerable. Alternatively, the city may have been deliberately abandoned in favor of a more defensible location, a decision that casts a shadow over Sargon's original intentions. This mystery of Ur-Nammu is compounded by the fact that the city's remains were only rediscovered in the early 19th century, centuries after its abandonment. When French archaeologist Paul-Émile Botta uncovered the ruins in 1843, the scale of the site stunned the archaeological world. What's even more intriguing is the fact that many of the sculptures and inscriptions discovered there seemed to tell a story that didn't quite align with the historical record we had come to understand. The imagery depicted grand triumphs, divine interactions, and heroic feats, but they didn't fully explain the rapid decline of the city. Why was such a grand project abandoned so quickly? Was it a failure in leadership or an external force that caused the city's fall, or were there unseen factors at play that history has failed to fully recognize? As if his reign were not marked by enough mysteries, the disappearance of Sargon II himself remains one of the greatest unresolved questions of Assyrian history. In 705 BCE, Sargon led an expedition to the land of the Sumerians, a nomadic tribe that had been raiding Assyrian territories. The campaign, while initially successful, ultimately ended in disaster. Sargon's death was recorded by his son and successor, Sennacherib, but the circumstances surrounding his death are unclear. Some scholars suggest that Sargon died in battle, while others believe that he was struck down in a mysterious assassination. His sudden death, amidst an ongoing military campaign, raises the question: was it a tragic accident or something more deliberate? The ambiguity surrounding Sargon II's death leads us to another layer of mystery: his successor, Sennacherib. Sennacherib's rise to the throne after his father's death seems almost too seamless, which raises the possibility of political intrigue at the highest levels. Did Sennacherib orchestrate his father's removal in order to take the throne? Or was his ascent a result of divine favor? While these questions may never be fully answered, they add another dimension to the enigma of Sargon II's reign, one that points to the ever-present possibility of intrigue and mysterious forces at work behind the scenes. Sargon's own words, often recorded in his monumental inscriptions, offer little clarity on these unanswered questions. He presents himself as the chosen one of the gods, a leader divinely ordained to conquer and expand Assyria's borders. Yet, the mysteries of his reign, his sudden rise, the enigmatic construction and abandonment of Ur-Nammu, and his unexplained death, suggest that Sargon's story may be more complex than it appears. Perhaps one of the most puzzling aspects of Sargon II's reign lies in his legacy. While his son Sennacherib would go on to make his own name in history, often overshadowing Sargon in popular accounts, Sargon's reign continues to draw intrigue. His military and architectural achievements were significant, yet the fate of his capital city, the manner of his death, and his mysterious rise to power linger as profound questions. In the end, Sargon II remains a shadowy figure in the annals of Assyrian history. Though we have records and archaeological evidence that speak to his glory and ambition, much about his life and reign remains elusive. The very idea of a king who was not born to rule, who built a great city only to see it abandoned, and who met a premature death under unclear circumstances, leaves us with more questions than answers. Was Sargon II truly the divine leader he claimed to be? Or were there darker forces at play, guiding his every decision and ultimately pulling the strings of his life? As we look deeper into his reign, the questions only multiply. What remains hidden in the ancient stones of Dur-Sharrukin? What truths lie buried beneath the sands, waiting to be unearthed? And most haunting of all, who or what truly ruled Assyria during the enigmatic reign of Sargon II? As we turn our gaze from the grandeur of Sargon II's reign, we come to a curious relic, one that invites us to step into the world of a different king, a different era, and a different vision of leadership. The Gudea Cylinders, inscribed with the words of Gudea, the ruler of the ancient Sumerian city-state of Lagash, stand as an extraordinary testament to a time long past. These intricately carved stone cylinders, discovered in the late 19th century, contain not only the official records of his reign, but also a deeper mystery that has eluded full understanding for centuries. What do these artifacts really reveal about Gudea, and why do they continue to provoke awe and uncertainty in equal measure? The cylinders, dating from around 2100 BCE, are remarkable in both their craftsmanship and the insight they provide into the complex world of Sumerian politics and religion. Standing nearly 3 feet tall, these tablets are covered in finely etched cuneiform writing, an ancient script that was the hallmark of Sumerian civilization. Unlike many inscriptions of the time, which tend to focus purely on military conquests or royal decrees, the Gudea Cylinders present a ruler whose authority seems to be deeply entwined with divine will. They describe, in intricate detail, Gudea's pious devotion, his dreams, and his efforts to build a magnificent temple dedicated to the god Ningirsu, the patron deity of Lagash. Yet, despite their historical significance, these cylinders have left many questions unanswered, opening up realms of speculation that stretch well beyond the known facts of his rule. The cylinders, in many ways, place Gudea within the context of a ruler who was both a king and a religious leader, an individual whose mandate came from the gods themselves. This unique portrayal of kingship is underscored by the vivid and almost mystical imagery on the tablets. The text speaks of Gudea's visionary dreams, wherein Ningirsu appears to him, instructing him to build a new temple. But it is the dream's symbolic nature that raises questions. Why would a king, centuries ago, need such a divine message to confirm his rule, when his power could have easily been assumed from mere royal lineage? Is there a deeper spiritual or mystical dimension to these writings that modern scholars have yet to fully decipher? Was Gudea's rule actually a response to some cosmic or divine necessity, beyond mere governance? The cylinders offer a stark contrast to many other royal inscriptions of the time. While other kings spoke of their military victories or territorial conquests, Gudea's inscriptions are filled with references to the construction of temples, the prophetic dreams he experienced, and the gifts he received from the gods. This divergence in focus has led some scholars to question, was Gudea truly as powerful a ruler as other kings of the time, or was he in fact a ruler under divine guidance, merely the earthly vessel for the will of the gods? This question raises the possibility that the dreams and divine commands recorded on the cylinders are not just symbolic, but may have been an actual part of Gudea's decision-making process, shaping his reign in ways we do not fully understand. Adding to the mystery is the fact that Gudea's reign was not marked by significant military expansion or notable conquest. In fact, it seems that Gudea's primary efforts were directed towards religious and cultural endeavors, namely the construction of the great temple of Ningirsu, which was described in one of the cylinders as a grand, monumental building, the likes of which had never been seen before. But what is so striking about this endeavor is not just the physical magnitude of the temple, but the spiritual significance attached to it. The text on the cylinder states that Gudea was chosen by Ningirsu to build the temple, and that this temple would be the focal point for divine communication. But what does it mean that this ruler, in particular, was chosen for such a monumental task. Moreover, Gudea's portrayal in the cylinders as a pious and divinely guided ruler raises questions about the nature of kingship in ancient Sumer. Was it truly the will of the gods that determined the fate of a city-state? Or were kings like Gudea merely attempting to use religion as a means of justifying their power? The Gudea Cylinders present us with an image of a ruler who views himself not as a monarch, but as a servant of the gods, a belief that would have been critical in establishing his legitimacy. Was Gudea a mere instrument of divine will, or did he exercise more agency than we might assume? The cylinders themselves are also striking because they are beautifully carved. The craftsmanship is remarkable for its time. The cuneiform script is meticulously etched, and the scenes on the cylinders often depict Gudea in the act of building the temple or receiving divine blessings from Ningirsu. But what makes these reliefs truly fascinating is the sense of otherworldliness that they convey. The way Gudea is portrayed as receiving not just royal authority but divine mandate raises an intriguing possibility. Could these cylinders serve as more than just a record of a king's reign? Could they be an artifact of a deeper, more profound interaction between man and the divine, a mystical connection that transcends the mundane concerns of kingship? Another intriguing element of the cylinders is the fact that Gudea's role as a builder is emphasized so strongly. The king's instructions to build temples and restore shrines are prominent in the inscriptions, and they suggest a king who believed in the power of the physical and spiritual realm to converge. The temples he constructed were not just places of worship. They were seen as the very vessels of divine presence on earth. Was Gudea's commitment to these constructions based on a genuine belief in their transformative power? Or was he constructing them for another reason entirely? Could these temples have had a symbolic significance, perhaps acting as a form of control or as a ritualistic tool to maintain divine favor? The sheer scale of the temples Gudea built suggests that they were not only for the gods, but also for the people, serving as focal points for their worship and rituals. There is also the possibility that the Gudea Cylinders were intended as a form of propaganda, designed not just to memorialize the king's reign, but to project an image of divine authority. By casting himself as a chosen ruler with divine favor, Gudea may have been positioning himself as the center of both earthly and celestial power, a move that could have helped secure his legacy and legitimize his actions. One of the enduring mysteries of the Gudea Cylinders lies in the enigmatic nature of their symbolism. While they are certainly a record of Gudea's reign, they are also deeply religious texts, steeped in imagery that eludes straightforward interpretation. Could there be hidden meanings within the inscriptions that have yet to be uncovered? Some researchers believe that the visions described by Gudea might reflect something more profound, something that speaks to a cosmic vision of kingship and the world that has been lost over the centuries. Could these visions have been tied to a larger metaphysical order, a framework of divine and cosmic interaction that modern interpretations have not fully embraced? As we contemplate the mysteries within the Gudea Cylinders, we are reminded that history, especially when it concerns religious and symbolic artifacts, is rarely clear-cut. The lines between truth, myth, and symbolism often blur, leaving us with more questions than answers. What did Gudea truly believe, and what did he hope to achieve through his divine mandate? Were his dreams a manifestation of divine will, or were they the product of his own desires to secure his place in history? The Gudea Cylinders are not just records. They are windows into a world that continues to elude our full understanding. As much as they reveal about ancient Sumerian kingship, they also underscore the enduring mysteries of divine guidance and spiritual authority. And as we reflect on these enigmatic objects, we are left with a single, lingering question. What else remains hidden in the rich tapestry of Sumerian history, waiting to be uncovered. What secrets still lie buried beneath the surface, beyond the reach of modern scholarship? The cylinders may have answered some questions, but in doing so, they have opened up a whole new realm of mysteries to explore. As we continue our exploration of ancient Mesopotamian wonders, we now come to an artifact that, in many ways, defies the boundaries of time and space. A relic so simple in appearance, yet so profound in its implications. The Babylonian world map, one of the earliest surviving depictions of the known world. Its story is one of geography, knowledge, and human curiosity, stretching back more than 2,500 years. But as we delve deeper into the map's mysteries, we begin to ask, what does this map reveal about the Babylonian worldview? And what might it suggest about the extent of ancient knowledge that perhaps was far more advanced than we have ever given credit for? The Babylonian map, also known as the Imago Mundi, was discovered in the ancient city of Sippar, in what is now Iraq, in the 19th century. The map is inscribed on a clay tablet, a medium that was commonly used for writing in ancient Mesopotamia. It is relatively small, measuring just 12 centimeters, roughly 5 inches in diameter, but its significance extends far beyond its size. In fact, this seemingly simple artifact is one of the most important examples of early cartography, offering an unprecedented glimpse into how the Babylonians understood the world around them. The map's design is striking in its simplicity. It portrays a central, circular region, which is interpreted as the world's center, possibly Babylon itself, surrounded by an array of geographical symbols and markers that suggest distant lands and seas. The outer edges are framed by what appears to be a turbulent ocean, filled with waves and marked by creatures that resemble sea monsters, hinting at an ancient belief in dangerous, unexplored waters beyond the known world. Within the circle, a series of what are believed to be cities, mountains, and rivers are depicted, although their exact identifications remain the subject of much debate. The map also includes inscriptions in cuneiform that describe the regions, sometimes with references to their mythological significance. At first glance, the map seems straightforward, a geographic tool designed to represent the known world. But as we examine it more closely, a number of unanswered questions arise. The most obvious is the nature of the map's representation. Unlike modern maps, which are drawn to scale, the Babylonian map is symbolic rather than literal. The regions are not drawn in realistic proportions, and the map does not appear to be based on any scientific measurements of distances. This leaves us wondering, was the map a practical tool for navigation, or was it a spiritual or mythological document? Was it meant to represent the world as it was, or as it was conceived by the Babylonians? One possibility is that the map was not meant for practical navigation, but rather served as a symbolic representation of the cosmos, a map that merged geography with mythology. The Babylonians, like many ancient cultures, believed in a universe where the gods and natural forces were inextricably linked to the world's geography. In this sense, the Babylonian world map could have been a religious or cosmological document, showing how the earth and heavens were intertwined in their understanding. The turbulent ocean surrounding the world may represent the chaos of the unknown, the boundary between the civilized world and the unexplored. The monsters depicted on the map may have been symbols of the perils lurking in the uncharted regions, drawing from ancient Babylonian mythology, where sea creatures often represented danger and the unknown. But there is another, more provocative possibility. Could the Babylonian world map be evidence of a global awareness in ancient times that we have long underestimated? Some scholars suggest that the map's depiction of distant lands, especially its inclusion of places beyond the reach of Babylonian influence, might hint at a more sophisticated understanding of the world than we typically associate with the ancient Near East. The inclusion of regions such as Assyria, Elam, and even Akkad might suggest that the Babylonians had access to more information about neighboring cultures and territories than previously believed. Moreover, some researchers speculate that the Babylonians might have had knowledge of lands far beyond Mesopotamia, perhaps even regions in Africa or the Indus Valley, though such theories remain speculative at best. One of the most intriguing aspects of the map is its depiction of the mythological elements intertwined with geographical features. The Babylonians, like many ancient cultures, saw the world as being shaped by both natural and divine forces. As such, the world was not simply a physical place, but also a realm influenced by the gods and supernatural forces. The Babylonian world map, with its combination of cities, natural features, and mythological symbols, may have been designed to reflect this belief system, an image of the world that was as much spiritual as it was geographical. In this way, the map might not just represent the physical world, but also the spiritual and cosmic realms that were inseparable from it. This fusion of the real and the symbolic raises the question of how far the Babylonians might have gone in blending science and mythology in their understanding of the world. It challenges the modern distinction between the scientific and the supernatural, suggesting that ancient peoples might have seen these concepts as much more fluid and interwoven than we often assume. Could the Babylonian world map reflect an ancient understanding of geography that included elements of cosmology and divine order? Was the world, in their view, a reflection of the divine realm, with the natural and supernatural elements acting in concert? Further complicating this narrative is the possibility that the map is not the only one of its kind. While the Babylonian map is the most famous, it is not the only example of ancient world maps from Mesopotamia. Other clay tablets from the same period feature depictions of geographical regions, sometimes with references to gods and mythical creatures. This suggests that the Babylonian worldview might have been rich with such symbolic representations of the world, each designed not just to serve practical needs, but to convey the cosmic order as understood by ancient cultures. If the Babylonians were creating multiple maps, were they part of a larger tradition of cosmological cartography? And if so, could there be other undiscovered maps waiting to be found, perhaps revealing more about the Babylonian understanding of the world and the universe? Despite the fascinating details that the map provides, its true meaning remains a mystery. Was it meant to represent the physical world as it was? Or was it a reflection of the cosmic order, an attempt to map the heavens as much as the earth? The discrepancies in scale and representation raise further questions. Could the Babylonians have known more about the physical world than we have yet uncovered? Or was the map simply a symbolic portrayal of their worldview? And what might we be missing in our modern interpretations of this ancient document? The Babylonian world map does more than simply record the geography of an ancient civilization. It challenges our understanding of the intersection between geography, mythology, and belief. As we look at this artifact, we are reminded that the past is not a series of neatly ordered facts, but a realm of complexity and mystery. What other ancient maps remain hidden in the sands of time? And how much more about the world did the Babylonians and other ancient civilizations know, yet leave unspoken? These questions, unanswered as they may be, invite us to reflect on the mysteries that lie beneath the surface of history, waiting for us to uncover them. As we journey further into the enigmatic world of ancient Mesopotamia, we encounter a puzzle that lies at the very heart of its civilization, the Akkadian script. While we have a wealth of knowledge about the cultures, cities, and people of ancient Mesopotamia, the Akkadian script presents us with a mystery that remains elusive. Its significance reaches beyond mere communication. This script represents a key to understanding not only the Akkadian Empire, but also the evolution of written language itself. The Akkadian script is a cuneiform writing system used by the Akkadians, one of Mesopotamia's most influential civilizations, who rose to power around 2300 BCE, under the rule of Sargon of Akkad. This script is primarily inscribed on clay tablets, just like other cuneiform systems of the time, but what makes it unique is its blend of logograms, symbols that represent entire words or concepts, and syllabic signs, symbols that represent syllables. This innovation allowed the Akkadian script to be used for both administrative and literary purposes. It's often described as the first Semitic script, as Akkadian itself belongs to the Semitic family of languages, the same language group that includes Hebrew, Arabic, and Aramaic. Yet despite the advances it represents, the Akkadian script is also shrouded in mystery. For centuries, scholars have pored over inscriptions, trying to decipher its structure, origins, and meanings. But some of the deeper questions remain unanswered. What motivated the Akkadians to develop a system of writing that so intricately blended symbols of sound and meaning? And perhaps more curiously, how did this writing system evolve? And what does it reveal about the broader scope of human communication at the time? The Akkadian script itself is often written in cuneiform, a writing system that evolved from Sumerian cuneiform, the first known form of writing in human history. Cuneiform, which means wedge-shaped in Latin, got its name from the wedge-shaped marks pressed into clay tablets using a reed stylus. Over time, this system expanded and became more complex, evolving from simple pictographs to abstract symbols that represented sounds and ideas. One of the intriguing aspects of the Akkadian script is its dual nature. It wasn't just a system of simple symbols, it was also a system of layers. The Akkadian syllabary was a complex mixture of phonetic and ideographic elements, combining both the representation of sounds and the conveyance of meaning. Some symbols represented entire words, while others stood for syllables, allowing for greater flexibility in writing. This hybrid system suggests a deep understanding of language's structure and a sophisticated approach to written communication. But why did the Akkadians choose this specific blend of phonetic and ideographic symbols? Was it a conscious decision to create a more versatile system of writing? Or was there something about the Akkadian language that made this blend a necessity? The earliest Akkadian texts are found in Sumerian cities, dating from the late 3rd millennium BCE. The Akkadian-speaking people were, after all, originally a Semitic-speaking group living in Mesopotamia, and their language was heavily influenced by the Sumerian language and its written script. As Akkadian speakers began to exert political and cultural influence, especially under Sargon of Akkad and his successors, they adapted the cuneiform script to better suit their own language. But one of the greatest mysteries surrounding the Akkadian script is how the Akkadians themselves navigated this transition. Did they develop the script entirely independently, or was there significant external influence? Some scholars speculate that the Akkadians may have borrowed elements of writing from even earlier, forgotten civilizations, blending them with their own linguistic needs and oral traditions. Moreover, we are left to wonder, what drove the Akkadians to develop such an intricate system of writing in the first place? Writing in any form is not a natural development, but a cultural innovation, often driven by the need for record-keeping, administration, or ritual purposes. The Akkadians, who were at the height of their power, might have been driven by the need to record legal matters, trade agreements, and military campaigns, just as the Sumerians had been. But Akkadian texts also reveal a literary tradition, poetry, myths, and royal inscriptions, suggesting that writing was not only practical, but also an artistic and cultural endeavor. What does this reveal about the Akkadian psyche, their perception of history, and their need to record their identity for future generations? One of the most significant texts written in the Akkadian script is the Epic of Gilgamesh, a mythological story that has come down to us as one of the oldest works of literature in the world. The epic's origins predate the Akkadian script itself, but it was eventually transcribed into Akkadian during the reign of the Neo-Assyrian Empire around the 7th century BCE. The Akkadian version of the epic reflects the cultural and literary sophistication of the Akkadians and raises intriguing questions about how language and writing could transmit such complex mythologies across centuries. The epic's preservation across time is a testament to the lasting power of the Akkadian script. It has also led scholars to ponder the symbolism embedded within the script. The Akkadian language, like many ancient languages, was filled with metaphors and poetic structures that gave written words multiple meanings. The Akkadian script itself, as a combination of sounds and symbols, might have been intentionally designed to carry these layered meanings, perhaps as a way to encapsulate the mystical and spiritual significance of language itself. Could this linguistic system have been as much a reflection of the spiritual world as the physical world? Did the Akkadians see their written language as a bridge between the human and the divine? As we delve deeper into the mystery of the Akkadian script, we confront even more questions. One of the most significant is why the Akkadian language, despite its widespread use throughout the Akkadian Empire and later Neo-Assyrian and Neo-Babylonian empires, gradually fell out of use. By the first millennium BCE, Akkadian was replaced by Aramaic, which became the lingua franca of the Near East. How did this shift occur, and what does it say about the decline of the Akkadian-speaking world? Was there a larger cultural shift that led to the abandonment of this once powerful writing system? Or did the Akkadian script simply reach the limits of its utility, giving way to the simpler, more accessible Aramaic alphabet? Another mystery lies in the decipherment of Akkadian texts. While scholars today are able to read and translate many Akkadian inscriptions, there are still vast amounts of untranslated texts, particularly from the early Akkadian period. How many secrets lie buried in these undeciphered tablets? Could there be ancient knowledge encoded in these texts that could shed light on forgotten aspects of Akkadian culture, science, and spirituality? In the end, the Akkadian script remains a profound mystery in many ways, a key that unlocks the ancient world, but also a puzzle that raises more questions than answers. It is a system that bridges the past with the present, offering us insights into how the Akkadian people thought, lived, and communicated. But the deeper we look, the more we realize that the answers we seek may still be hidden beneath the surface, waiting to be uncovered by those who are willing to listen closely to the ancient echoes of cuneiform. What else lies waiting in the still untranslated tablets? What deeper meanings might be revealed if we could only understand the full scope of the Akkadian script? These are questions that invite us to continue the journey of discovery, for the mysteries of the Akkadian script, much like the civilizations that created it, are far from fully explained. As we continue our exploration of the mysteries of ancient Mesopotamia, we turn our attention to a defining event, a battle that shaped the fate of empires and carved its name into the annals of history, the Battle of Carchemish. A confrontation that, while seemingly well documented, still carries within it a shadow of unanswered questions and uncertainties. A battle that serves not only as a military clash, but as a critical juncture in the rise and fall of ancient civilizations. Carchemish, an ancient city located on the banks of the Euphrates River in modern-day Syria, was one of the most strategic cities in the ancient world. Its position at the crossroads of trade routes and its proximity to powerful empires made it a target of conquests and a symbol of power. The ruins of Carchemish, once a bustling metropolis, now lie in relative silence, punctuated by the remains of massive city walls and broken stone tablets. The ancient city has left us with whispers of a time long past, but the echoes of a battle fought here more than 2.5 millennia ago continue to intrigue historians, archaeologists, and enthusiasts of ancient warfare. It was in 605 BCE that Carchemish became the focal point of one of the most significant battles in the ancient Near East, a conflict that would resonate far beyond the borders of Mesopotamia. The battle itself was fought between the forces of Nebuchadnezzar II, the great king of Babylon, and Pharaoh Necho II of Egypt, who had ambitions of restoring Egypt's influence over the region, which had been lost centuries earlier. Nebuchadnezzar, fresh off the heels of his victory over the Assyrians, stood poised to cement Babylon's dominance. Necho, determined to challenge that power and maintain Egyptian supremacy in the area, had his own designs on the ancient city of Carchemish. The Babylonian forces, led by Nebuchadnezzar himself, clashed with the Egyptian and Syrian armies at Carchemish in what would become a decisive confrontation. The Egyptians, though numerous, were no match for the well-coordinated and highly skilled Babylonian troops. In a crushing defeat, Necho's forces were routed, and his army was forced to retreat. Nebuchadnezzar, now victorious, was left to sweep across the region, consolidating power and establishing Babylon's supremacy over Mesopotamia. This victory would shape the geopolitical landscape for centuries to come, but the battle's aftermath raises several intriguing questions that have yet to be fully answered. Despite the seemingly straightforward narrative of this battle, there is more to Carchemish than simply military tactics and imperial ambition. One of the most perplexing aspects of this conflict lies in its larger context. For years, scholars have pondered what led to the eruption of war in the first place. Was this merely the result of the natural ebb and flow of empires, where one power rises and another falls, or was there something more to the Battle of Carchemish, a deeper, more intricate layer of motives and forces at play? One key element to consider is the historical rivalry between Babylon and Egypt, which dates back to the collapse of the Assyrian Empire. Following the fall of Assyria, Egypt had hoped to fill the power vacuum, but the rise of Babylon as the new superpower of the ancient world foiled these plans. Nebuchadnezzar II, already a formidable military leader, sought to extend his empire's reach, and Carchemish stood as an important gateway to controlling the vast territories of the ancient Near East. But was the Battle of Carchemish truly just a military engagement over territorial control? Or was it a battle for something deeper? Perhaps a struggle for control over the mystical and religious influence of the region? Some scholars have speculated that Nebuchadnezzar's victories were not only about land and power, but also about asserting his authority over ancient symbols of divine rule. The cities and territories that fell under Babylon's control were often rich with religious significance, and Nebuchadnezzar may have seen himself as the divinely ordained ruler, chosen to bring the world into a new era. Was there an element of religious destiny tied to his military campaigns? Nebuchadnezzar himself often portrayed his victories as fulfilling divine will, but what did that mean for the conquered peoples of the ancient Near East? Did they perceive his rise as a divine intervention, or as a power-hungry monarch exploiting religious narratives to solidify his rule? Another dimension to consider is the legacy of the battle. While the historical outcome of the Battle of Carchemish is known, Babylonian victory, the long-term consequences are not as clear-cut. Following the defeat of Necho and the Egyptian forces, Babylon's dominance was virtually uncontested for a time. Yet this victory did not end Egypt's aspirations in the region. Instead, Egypt's influence began to shift, and the role of its military power in the ancient world gradually waned, while Babylon's empire experienced its own internal struggles. But what of Carchemish itself? The city, though strategically important, seems to have suffered a strange fate after the battle. Some records suggest that after the Babylonian conquest, Carchemish was virtually abandoned or destroyed. Its once great walls crumbled, and the once thriving city disappeared from history's stage. Could it be that the battle and the subsequent military occupation drained Carchemish of its earlier significance, or was there something about the city itself, something hidden, that led to its mysterious decline? Could Carchemish, in its own way, have become a symbol of the shifting tides of power, swallowed up by the forces it sought to control? As fascinating as the military aspect of the Battle of Carchemish is, perhaps the greatest mystery lies in the unanswered questions about its lasting impact. The ruins of Carchemish still stand as a testament to an ancient world, and yet, much of what we know about the city and the battle is based on fragments of records, inscriptions, and accounts that have survived the passage of time. These sources provide valuable insights, but they leave behind just as many questions. Were there deeper geopolitical forces at play during the battle, forces that have remained hidden to history? Could the battle have been a mere reflection of larger cultural or spiritual struggles that are now lost to time? Moreover, we are left to ask, why does the Battle of Carchemish continue to captivate our imagination? Why does it linger as a mystery? Is it because it was not merely a military engagement, but the clash of two civilizations, each with their own vision of the future? Or is it because, like so many events in ancient history, the battle raises as many questions as it answers? Questions about the nature of power, destiny, and the forces that shape human history. We may never have full answers, but perhaps it is this very uncertainty, the mystery of Carchemish, that keeps us returning to it. As we look at the ruins of Carchemish, we are confronted not just with a physical landscape, but with a deeper, more philosophical puzzle. What did this battle truly signify? What truths remain hidden in the dust of ancient ruins? These are questions that, much like the ancient cities themselves, remain standing, waiting for someone to look closer, to piece together the fragments and to uncover the secrets that still lie buried beneath the earth. The ancient city of Babylon, one of Mesopotamia's greatest wonders, is a place where celestial mysteries seem to be woven into the very fabric of life. The Mesopotamians were not just brilliant builders and engineers. They were also keen observers of the stars, crafting intricate star maps that not only mapped the heavens, but also reflected their complex relationship with the cosmos. These maps, scattered across cuneiform tablets and inscribed into monumental stone, provide a window into the ancient world's view of the universe, suggesting a profound understanding of the night sky. Yet, as advanced as these maps were, they also invite a series of questions that have puzzled historians and astronomers for centuries. In the dusty archives of the British Museum, in the heart of the Louvre, and in the libraries of Baghdad, some of the most incredible remnants of this ancient science can be found: the Mesopotamian star maps. These artifacts, etched into clay and stone, depict the constellations and planets, sometimes in exquisite detail, and often suggest a knowledge of celestial mechanics that seems far ahead of its time. The most famous of these artifacts is the Mul-Da'apin, a series of clay tablets that date back to around the 7th century BCE. This astronomical text, one of the most significant surviving documents of Babylonian astronomy, lists the constellations known to the Babylonians, along with their associated myths and rituals. It served as a guide to the heavens, helping priests and scholars to predict the movements of stars and planets, which were believed to influence everything from the weather to the fate of kings. Yet there is something deeper at play in these star maps, something that raises questions about the extent of the Mesopotamians' understanding of the universe. The Mul-Da'apin is more than a practical guide to the stars. It's an astronomical record, infused with meaning, where the positions of the stars were linked to the will of the gods. The ancient Babylonians saw the stars as the pathways through which the divine ordered the world. As we study these ancient star maps, we're faced with a paradox. How could a civilization, without the aid of modern telescopes or complex machinery, map the stars with such precision? The Babylonians weren't just mapping constellations. They were also recording the movements of planets, the most elusive celestial bodies in the night sky. The so-called planetary diaries offer fascinating glimpses into the Mesopotamians' deep knowledge of the solar system. These texts track the movements of the 5 visible planets: Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn, over the course of decades, sometimes even centuries. The accuracy with which they were able to chart these wandering stars, as they called them, suggests a sophisticated understanding of planetary orbits. How did the Babylonians achieve this level of precision? Was it the result of sheer observation, or did they possess knowledge that has been lost to time? One of the most intriguing aspects of the Mesopotamian star maps is the link between celestial events and the earthbound world. Eclipses, in particular, held a special significance for the Babylonians, who believed they were omens sent by the gods. The star maps often contain detailed records of lunar and solar eclipses, sometimes accompanied by prophecies or royal decrees. The Babylonians used these celestial events to predict future occurrences, such as the death of a king, the success of a military campaign, or even the fertility of the land. The integration of astronomy with political and religious life suggests that the Babylonians viewed the heavens not just as a realm to be studied, but as a system that governed the fate of mankind. Could it be that these star maps were not just scientific tools, but also instruments of power designed to maintain the divine order on Earth? As we delve deeper into the star maps, we begin to encounter a more enigmatic aspect of Mesopotamian astronomy: the idea of hidden knowledge. Several ancient texts, including the Enuma, Anu, and Lil, a collection of omen texts that contains references to celestial phenomena, suggest that the Babylonians had access to a kind of secret astronomical knowledge. This knowledge, passed down through generations of priests and scholars, may have been considered too sacred or too dangerous for the common people. Were the Babylonians using these star maps to navigate not just the heavens, but the very fate of their civilization? Was there a secret, hidden layer of meaning embedded in these star maps? An esoteric system of celestial navigation that could unlock the mysteries of the cosmos. This idea is reinforced by the presence of what some scholars have referred to as sacred geometry in the design of certain star maps. The use of specific ratios and patterns in the layout of constellations suggests that the Babylonians may have had a deep, almost mystical, understanding of the geometry of the heavens. Some have even speculated that the Babylonian star maps were designed not only to chart the night sky, but to encode deeper truths about the universe, truths that were accessible only to the initiated. If this is true, then these maps might be more than mere records of astronomical observation. They might be a form of celestial code, a key to unlocking ancient knowledge that has been hidden from the world for millennia. While much of the evidence remains speculative, it's clear that the Mesopotamians had an extraordinarily advanced understanding of the stars. Yet, this raises a compelling question. How did they acquire this knowledge? Was it the result of centuries of careful observation and accumulated wisdom? Or did they have access to something more, something that allowed them to see the heavens in ways that we can only begin to comprehend? The fact that so much of their astronomical knowledge appears to be encoded in these star maps suggests that there may have been secrets hidden within the stars themselves, secrets that could provide answers to questions we have yet to ask. As we stand beneath the same stars that the Babylonians once studied, it's easy to be overwhelmed by the scale and mystery of the universe. The Mesopotamians looked to the heavens for guidance, for answers, and perhaps for a glimpse of the divine. Their star maps remain as enigmatic today as they were when they were first created, offering us only a fragmented glimpse into their complex worldview. And while we may have unraveled much of their astronomical knowledge, we are left to wonder what else lies hidden in the stars. What celestial secrets remain to be discovered, waiting for us to look up and decode their message just as the Babylonians once did. The desert winds sweep across the plains of Mesopotamia, carrying with them the scent of dust and ancient earth. Beneath the endless sky, the once vibrant city of Babylon now lies in ruins, its grandeur lost to time. Yet, despite its physical demise, one story from Babylonian antiquity continues to captivate the imagination, an enigma that refuses to fade into the obscurity of the past. The Hanging Gardens of Babylon. Legend tells of a vast garden suspended in midair, an oasis of lush greenery rising from the dry desert floor, defying nature itself. Towering terraces filled with exotic plants, fruit trees, and flowers cascaded down like a living waterfall, with water flowing from an unknown source to nourish the vegetation. The gardens were said to have been built by King Nebuchadnezzar II around 600 BCE as a tribute to his wife, Ametis of Media, who longed for the lush, mountainous landscape of her homeland. The sight of this vibrant paradise amidst the starkness of Babylon's dusty surroundings was said to have been nothing short of breathtaking, an architectural marvel that combined engineering prowess with botanical ingenuity. Yet, for all the beauty and splendor the Hanging Gardens are said to have embodied, the very existence of this wonder remains shrouded in mystery. Was it a true architectural feat that stood for centuries, or simply the product of myth and legend, passed down through the ages to capture the imagination of future generations? To understand the mystery, we must first attempt to reconstruct the descriptions that have survived. Ancient accounts of the gardens were penned by Greek historians, such as Strabo and Philo of Byzantium, who wrote about the marvel in vivid detail. According to these accounts, the Hanging Gardens consisted of multiple tiers, each filled with a variety of plants, some of which were likely exotic species from distant lands. The uppermost terrace would have been the most impressive, elevated high above the city, with an irrigation system that allowed water to flow upwards to nourish the plants. The design itself was said to be nothing short of miraculous, so complex that it would require intricate systems of pulleys, pumps, and an advanced form of hydraulic engineering to sustain it. The gardens, it seemed, were not only a wonder of beauty, but a marvel of engineering. Yet, despite these glowing accounts, no physical evidence of the Hanging Gardens has ever been conclusively found in the ruins of Babylon, located near present-day Hilla in Iraq. Excavations of the ancient city have uncovered grand palaces, the imposing Ishtar Gate, and numerous other impressive structures, but not a single trace of the gardens themselves. This has led some scholars to speculate that perhaps the gardens were never built in Babylon at all. Instead, the gardens may have been constructed in another city, perhaps Nineveh, the capital of the Assyrian Empire, which was ruled by King Sennacherib. Some ancient texts describe gardens in Nineveh that closely match the descriptions of the Hanging Gardens. Could the ancient historians have mistakenly attributed these gardens to Babylon, or was the legend simply an amalgamation of various stories about grand gardens from the region? Another theory is that the Hanging Gardens were, in fact, a symbolic or poetic construction, a mythic embellishment of the real gardens that may have existed within the walls of Nebuchadnezzar's palace complex. The ancient Greeks, after all, were known for their tendency to embellish and romanticize the past, adding layers of grandeur to the stories they inherited. Could the concept of hanging gardens, so at odds with the arid landscape of Babylon, be a metaphorical expression of the garden's beauty and grandeur, rather than a literal description of its design? While these questions continue to baffle historians and archaeologists, another layer of mystery arises when we consider the engineering feat that would have been required to create such a spectacle in an environment as unforgiving as the Mesopotamian desert. The city of Babylon was situated between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, but its immediate surroundings were far from hospitable to such a lush, water-dependent garden. How, then, could the Hanging Gardens have been sustained without a constant supply of water? The answer may lie in an advanced form of irrigation technology, one that would have been a marvel for its time. Ancient accounts suggest that water was drawn from the Euphrates River and raised to the upper terraces through a sophisticated hydraulic system. This could have involved a chain of pumps and screw-like mechanisms, a concept later known as the Archimedean screw, which could have been used to transport water to the highest levels of the garden. Yet the logistics of such a system remain unclear. Were the Mesopotamians truly capable of engineering such a complex water-lifting device? And if so, how did they manage to maintain it over the course of years, especially considering the harsh environmental conditions? Moreover, what of the materials used to build the gardens themselves? The accounts suggest that the gardens were built on terraces that were supported by massive stone foundations. Some of the stones used in these constructions may have weighed several tons, far beyond the carrying capacity of the average laborer. Were these stones transported with primitive lifting techniques, or was there some sort of advanced technology at work that we have yet to fully comprehend? Could there have been knowledge or techniques lost to time, perhaps suppressed by the passing centuries, which allowed for the construction of such monumental structures? As we consider these questions, we must also acknowledge the possibility that the Hanging Gardens were not entirely of human design. Some fringe theories suggest that the gardens may have had some otherworldly influence, either in terms of the technology needed to create them or the inspiration behind their design. Could the gardens have been built with knowledge from a civilization far more advanced than the Sumerians or Babylonians? Or could they have been constructed by beings with capabilities that are beyond our understanding? There are also those who speculate about the symbolic significance of the Hanging Gardens. What if they were not meant to be merely a physical structure, but rather a metaphor for the connection between heaven and earth? The imagery of a garden suspended in the air, reaching towards the heavens, could symbolize the unity of the divine and the mortal realms. In a world where the gods were believed to be deeply involved in the lives of humans, the Hanging Gardens might have served as a divine bridge, connecting the earthly realm with the celestial one. Could the gardens have been a spiritual expression, designed to manifest divine favor and the blessings of the gods upon the kingdom of Babylon? With all these theories, there is still no definitive evidence to confirm or deny the existence of the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. Some argue that we may simply never find the gardens, buried too deep beneath the sands of time, hidden in the ruins of a city that has been ravaged by war, neglect, and the unrelenting forces of nature. Yet, the mystery endures. The possibility that the Hanging Gardens were not just a symbol of human achievement, but also a representation of something far beyond the understanding of the ancient world, invites us to ponder what might still remain to be uncovered. Was the Hanging Gardens of Babylon truly one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world? Or is it simply the product of myth and imagination? And if it did exist, what secrets might still be locked within its forgotten terraces, waiting to be rediscovered by the explorers of the future? As with so many ancient mysteries, we are left with more questions than answers, and the legend of the Hanging Gardens of Babylon continues to inspire awe and speculation. As the sun dips low over the dusty expanse of Mesopotamia, the ancient land seems to hold its breath, like a secret waiting to be revealed. The shifting sands of time conceal a world of forgotten history where myth and reality blur, and the passage of centuries has left only fragmented whispers of civilizations that once thrived. Among the most enigmatic of these remains is a single cryptic document, the Sumerian King List. This ancient record, carved into stone, offers a tantalizing glimpse into the early history of one of humanity's first great civilizations. But what exactly does it tell us? And more importantly, what does it leave out? The Sumerian King List is more than just a dry catalog of kings. It is a puzzle, an archaeological enigma that has perplexed scholars for centuries. This ancient text, believed to have been written around 2100 BCE, lists the names of the kings who ruled over Sumer, an area that corresponds to modern-day southern Iraq, stretching back in time to a period before the great cities of Uruk and Ur had even been founded. At first glance, it may seem like little more than a formal record of succession. one king after another, with the dates of their reigns, the cities they ruled, and the extraordinary lengths of their rule. But this seemingly straightforward list raises more questions than answers. The Sumerian king list survives in various versions, with the most famous copies found in the ancient cities of Ur and Nippur. Carved into large clay tablets, the text presents a narrative that begins with the dawn of civilization itself, claiming that the first rulers of Sumer were bestowed with their power by the gods. The text tells of a golden age, when kingship was passed down by divine decree, and the first rulers reigned for impossibly long periods, thousands of years in some cases. For example, the king Alulim, the very first king of Sumer, is said to have ruled for 28,800 years. His successor, Alangar, reigned for a mere 36,000 years. Such figures are not just extraordinary, they are virtually unimaginable. How could a human being live for such long spans of time? Is this simply an exaggeration, a mythological embellishment designed to elevate the status of early rulers? Or does it suggest something deeper, something beyond our conventional understanding of history? As we move further down the list, the reigns of these early kings begin to grow shorter, but they still remain staggeringly long by modern standards. The kingship, according to the list, eventually passed from the realm of the gods to a more human-like succession, though the reigns are still marked by durations that stretch the boundaries of what we know about human lifespans. The kings of Sumer, after all, were not mere rulers. They were viewed as god kings, divine representatives on earth. But even in their humanity, there remains an air of the supernatural about them, an aura that seems to stretch across the millennia. The question arises, why such exaggerated figures? Were the Sumerians simply using hyperbole to emphasize the greatness of their kings, or was there something else at work? Some have suggested that the Sumerian king list may reflect a different understanding of time, one that was more cyclical or symbolic rather than linear. In this view, the long reigns could be interpreted not as actual lifespans, but as a representation of the divine or cosmic order, perhaps reflecting the eternal nature of kingship itself rather than the age of the ruler. What is even more puzzling is the sudden appearance of historical figures in the middle of this mythic timeline. Following the long reigns of mythical kings, real historical figures such as Gilgamesh and Sargon of Akkad make their appearance. These kings, whose deeds are well documented in other ancient texts, are presented as though they were part of a seamless continuum of rulers. But here, in the Sumerian king list, their reigns appear to be part of a larger narrative, a narrative that blends myth and history in ways that defy modern understanding. Gilgamesh, for example, the legendary king of Uruk, is said to have ruled for only 126 years in the Sumerian king list, a figure that, in contrast to the thousands of years assigned to earlier kings, seems almost trivial. And yet, the Epic of Gilgamesh, one of the most famous works of ancient literature, depicts him as a man who transcends time, achieving immortality through the quest for wisdom and knowledge. In one sense, the shorter reign in the king list could be seen as an attempt to ground Gilgamesh in a more tangible human context. Yet, in the larger scheme of things, his life is still part of a much grander cosmic narrative. But what of Sargon of Akkad, the founder of the Akkadian Empire, whose historical deeds have been well documented? Sargon's reign in the Sumerian king list is presented as being preceded by mythical kings, and his rise to power seems to come from out of nowhere. He is described as having ascended the throne after a flood, which, according to the list, was a common event at the end of each era of kingship. This recurring motif of a great flood ties the story of Sargon to an earlier mythic cycle, and further blurs the line between historical fact and mythology. Could Sargon's emergence as a king be the result of a divine intervention? or was his rise merely a product of more mundane political dynamics, obscured by the lens of myth? Further complicating the issue is the existence of gaps in the Sumerian king list. There are missing periods of time, eras where no kings are listed, or where the names of rulers seem to vanish from the historical record entirely. This leaves us wondering, were there once rulers whose names were lost to time, or were entire dynasties and cities erased from history for reasons that remain unclear? The absence of certain rulers could suggest that the list was purposefully edited with some figures omitted for political or religious reasons. Could the Sumerian king list have been an attempt to establish a unified and divine narrative, one that omitted the inconvenient truths of a fragmented and chaotic past? Some scholars even suggest that the list could have been used for political purposes, perhaps as a tool to legitimize the reign of a particular dynasty or king. If the kingship of Sumer was believed to be divinely ordained, then claiming a direct lineage from the gods and associating one's reign with the great mythic kings could have served to solidify a ruler's claim to power. The Sumerian king list has inspired its fair share of fringe theories too. Some have suggested that the long reigns of the early kings might represent a form of memory encoding, in which the Sumerians encoded astronomical or astrological events into their historical records. Could these kings represent constellations, or the rise and fall of celestial bodies? Did the ancient Mesopotamians perhaps understand the stars in a way that we have long since forgotten? Could the long reigns actually correspond to cycles of the heavens rather than earthly kings? Even more speculative theories propose that the Sumerian king list could be evidence of an ancient, lost civilization, one that existed long before the Sumerians, and whose knowledge of time, kingship, and the divine influenced later cultures. Some theorists have even suggested that the mythic kings of the list were not human at all, but beings from another world who imparted their wisdom and technology to early Sumer. Could the ancient kings have been more than mere mortals, gifted with extraordinary abilities that allowed them to live for centuries? The mysteries of the Sumerian king list are many, and the answers remain elusive. Was it a tool of political power, a document of divine legitimacy, or an encrypted record of ancient cosmic knowledge? And why, after the great flood that seemingly reset history, do the kings of the list return to a more human-like existence? With each passing century, more questions arise, and the ancient record remains stubbornly silent, offering no definitive answers. In the quiet desert, as the wind shifts the sand over the ruins of Sumer, we are left to ponder. What remains hidden beneath the layers of myth and time? What secrets might the Sumerian king list still hold, waiting for the right moment to emerge from the shadows of history? The soft glow of ancient artifacts, bathed in the dim lighting of museum display cases, can invoke an overwhelming sense of connection to a world long past. Among these relics, perhaps none is more evocative than the Sumerian cylinder seal. Small, yet intricately carved works of art that have survived millennia, providing us with glimpses into the distant past of ancient Mesopotamia. These objects, often no more than a few inches in length, were once used to authenticate documents, mark ownership, or express divine authority. But as much as they were utilitarian objects, they also served as miniature canvases for the depiction of extraordinary scenes. Now, these same seals, embellished with images of gods, kings, mythological creatures, and scenes of daily life, raise profound questions about the Sumerians' beliefs, their connection to the divine, and perhaps even the deeper mysteries of the universe. When you hold a cylinder seal in your mind's eye, you see a small, finely crafted object. Most were made from materials like lapis lazuli, carnelian, or alabaster, carved with astonishing precision by artisans who possessed an advanced understanding of design. These seals were often rolled across wet clay, leaving behind an impression of their intricate carvings. Each imprint was unique. No two were exactly alike, serving as an ancient form of identification, much like a modern signature or seal. Yet, it's not the practical aspect of these objects that draws the deepest intrigue. It's the mystery of the imagery they carry. Some cylinder seals bear familiar motifs, gods, kings, and priests engaged in rituals or acts of power. But others depict more perplexing and unsettling images. Strange hybrid creatures, half human, half animal, stand alongside deities with wings, flanked by beings that seem to transcend human understanding. Among these, one of the most famous images appears to show the figure of a god or a priestess, draped in elaborate garments, holding a ritualistic object, while what appears to be an angelic or supernatural figure hovers in the background. But what could this mean? Were these merely representations of the gods the Sumerians worshipped, or could they be something else altogether? Could these images be telling us more than we realize about the Sumerians' understanding of the cosmos, the divine, and their place in the universe? These seals often depict divine figures, many of whom have wings or otherworldly features. Were these figures the gods of Sumerian religion, or were they symbols of something more? Some researchers have suggested that the images may represent a lost cosmology, one in which the divine and the human worlds were far more intertwined than we typically imagine. After all, the Sumerians themselves believed their kings were divinely appointed and often acted as intermediaries between the gods and humanity. Could the figures on these seals represent divine beings, angels, or even extraterrestrial visitors, communicating with humankind in ways that have been lost to time? Then there are the seals that depict strange, hybrid creatures, beings with the bodies of lions, the heads of humans, or the forms of birds mixed with human elements. What did these hybrid creatures represent? Were they gods, mythical beings, or perhaps creatures from a far-off mythology? In ancient cultures, hybrid animals were often considered symbols of power, as they could embody both the strength of the animal kingdom and the intellect or status of the human world. But could there be more to these figures than simple symbolism? Might they represent lost knowledge, encoded in art that only the initiated could truly understand? For centuries, scholars have debated the purpose and meaning of these symbols. Some insist that the seals were simply tools used by the Sumerians to signify ownership or authenticate agreements. Indeed, that was part of their function. Pressed into wet clay, the seal would leave behind a unique imprint, marking documents, goods, and property. This was a practical system in a society that valued trade and bureaucracy. Yet, there's a growing suspicion among researchers that these seals may have been more than just functional objects. Could it be that these cylinders were used not only to mark goods or documents, but also to encode deeper meanings? Some have argued that the Sumerians may have used the seals to record esoteric knowledge, hidden within the images they carved. After all, these were highly literate people, capable of producing some of the earliest known forms of writing, and their use of symbolic images was deeply entrenched in their worldview. It's not hard to imagine that the scenes on these seals could have been used to convey messages that were meant to be understood by only a select few. These could be instructions for rituals, or even secrets meant to protect or empower the ruling class. Take, for example, a cylinder seal depicting a king or high priest in communion with a celestial figure, perhaps even an angelic being. The symbols surrounding them are intricate and rich with detail. Animals, heavenly bodies, and what could be coded patterns that represent the movements of stars or the position of planets. Could the imagery on these seals be telling us something about the Sumerians' knowledge of astrology, celestial events, or cosmic order? Were these images intended to guide their rulers, or to unlock wisdom that has since been lost? There's another intriguing theory. that these seals may have been used as part of an advanced form of communication or ritual magic. In many cultures, symbols and images were believed to hold power, and the Sumerians were no strangers to ritual and divination. Could these seals have been more than just representations of power? They could have been tools to channel spiritual or cosmic energy. Some have even suggested that the intricate carvings were not simply decorative, but rather encoded with complex instructions or hidden knowledge. Could the Sumerians have known something about the forces of the universe, expressed through these enigmatic images that we have yet to rediscover? Furthermore, there are theories that these seals were not just a form of documentation, but also a means of communicating with the divine. Some seals show gods and humans together in intimate, almost ritualistic settings. These figures seem to perform acts that transcend mere mortal understanding, acts that might involve the manipulation of cosmic forces. In many ways, these seals might be seen as sacred texts, encoding the very beliefs, laws, and rituals that governed Sumerian society. Yet, despite the many insights these seals have offered, the true purpose of the Sumerian cylinder seals remains elusive. Were they purely utilitarian, designed only to mark ownership and authenticate transactions? Or do they hide a deeper mystery, one that has yet to be fully uncovered? Could the images on these seals be telling us a story that is not just about the gods of Sumer, but about a cosmic order and secret knowledge that has been lost to time? As we continue to study the Sumerian cylinder seals, the questions only multiply. What do these symbols really mean? How did the Sumerians understand their connection to the divine and the cosmos? Could they have been privy to knowledge that has since vanished, encoded within these tiny, enigmatic works of art? And if so, what secrets might still be hidden within the grooves of these ancient seals, waiting to be uncovered? These are questions that may never have definitive answers. But as long as we continue to explore the mysteries of the ancient world, the Sumerian cylinder seals will remain one of its most compelling and enigmatic artifacts. The story they tell may not be fully understood yet, but they continue to captivate, offering us a tantalizing glimpse into the lost knowledge of a civilization that once stood at the dawn of human history.